Good evening. The time being 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 10th, 2014 to order. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. To give a preview of the agenda for tonight, we'll start at 7:05 with public input and board member update. Well, first we'll start with mail from Town Administrator. At 7:05, we're scheduled for public input and member updates. At 7:10, we're scheduled to hear of a police patrol appointment. At 7:15, we have 2 requests from the Council on Aging. At 7:30, we have a public hearing for the Neshoba Valley Tubing Extensive Recreation Permit. At 8 o'clock, we have an update on 2 items from the school department. At 8:15, we're going to hear from the Facility Assessment Priorities Working Group. And at 8:30, we're scheduled to hear from the Town Administrator and Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. There's about 6 items that we're going to talk about, including the fire station financing and the May 5th town meetings. At 9:15, we have other business. And at 9:20, we are scheduled for executive session with Town Council. I'd just like to make a statement today. As I think it's pretty widely known that Jenna Brownson has resigned, citing personal and family issues, and we just want to wish her mother well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Keith Bergman for the mail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to including the letter of resignation, I also included some information which I've now posted at the town's website as well, spelling out how a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen gets filled. That matter is not on the agenda tonight, but it should be on the agenda for future board meeting. The short answer is that any vacancy on the Board of Selectmen gets filled by a special election, and that the election is one that is called by the Board of Selectmen either on their own motion or at the direction of 200 registered voters. That direction by the voter petition, though, can only be made if we are more than 100 days, rather, prior to an annual town election, more than 100 days. And we are not more than 100 days, we are within 100 days, so that matter remains the Board of Selectmen's determination until after the May 10th election. And the expectation is that long before then, the board will have a discussion about when you want to hold a special election. We've asked the town clerk to prepare a recommended date once she's had a chance to look at the calendar. And I'll just say preliminarily, we're looking at June. That while there is an election scheduled in September, which is the state primary election, that the board may view that that's too long to wait. Summer is typically not a good time to have an election. It just so happens in late June, we've got a number of things planned, including the 300th anniversary celebration kicking off, so we're looking to see what date we can bring forward for your consideration.
So you and I will look at the agenda because there's no rush before May 10th, because we can't do anything until after May 10th.
You can't, well,
we don't have...
Well, I think what we'll want to do is, as soon as the town clerk is ready with a recommendation, to bring that forward, because one of the other considerations is that there needs to be enough time built in for people to take out nomination papers and bring them back, and all within statutory time frame. So we'll have, you can't vote on that tonight. It wasn't on the agenda that was posted on Thursday, but it will be on an agenda for a future meeting.
Okay.
For discussion. Okay. We also have a couple of grant announcements from the fire department. One is for the Student Awareness of Fire Education, so-called SAFE program. You see the chief in the back, and the other is for a senior SAFE program. So congratulations to the Littleton Fire Department for both of those grants. In our mail packet, I've also included a letter which Mass DOT sent to the Littleton Public Schools regarding ongoing discussion of traffic issues concerning Littleton High School. And we'll just note that for the record here, but I think it begs some further discussions between the town and the state, both of whom are on the top list of jurisdictions who have complete streets policies, and I think we'd like to have a discussion with Mass DOT about what that means, and so that we can have a safer intersection than they were prepared to give us. Chief.
Can we let him?
No, go ahead. No, if you're responding to that, yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Your call.
No, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Right. We did send a letter to Mr. Palmer, the director of Mass DOT, and right now, those letters passed in the mail. So we're going to have to see what response we get from there. So that's where we're at.
Very good.
And we're happy to help resolve that in any way that we can. Next, we have a letter that is in the packet from the Littleton Conservation Trust. It's a follow-up from the presentation we had at our last meeting. Staff will be meeting with Rick Finley tomorrow in an effort to finalize the proposed town meeting article dealing with the Long Lake Park lot consolidation proposal that he presented at the last meeting, and if so, that it would require a further vote to insert that article on the warrant. So that's the update in the packet. I just had one other update that I emailed about that looks like we're getting some help from, again, from MAPC in a planning matter. We had asked for state funding to help look at a parking needs assessment feasibility study for the Littleton MBTA commuter rail station. The state had not come up with its own funding sources to start that review, but MAPC is dedicating some of its money to begin that process. So we will start to the extent that we can with their resources, and we'll plug in our committees here and staff as part of that process.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much. I will now turn it over to public input. Is there anybody who has something to say? Mr. Coughlin, you had your hand up first.
Tom Coughlin, Road. If you could help me clarify the agenda. I heard you say at 8:30 we're going to have reviewing the way we finance the fire station. Is the public going to get a chance to speak at that time?
I don't know how we're going to handle it, because we got to see what the board wants to do, because we probably will not have time for a full discussion. I think we're going to, I don't know, my thought was that since it's a small agenda item right now and is on a big agenda, we would talk about what our next step was. Would we hold a public session? Would we have something larger, another agenda item? But if you have something to say, you know, you can be sure you can say it now if you like.
It's a $7 million project, and I think the board should take the time to discuss it with the public.
Well, I think
we had prepared for this evening, and I don't want to be denied something to say this evening.
Well, what usually happens on these things is that the board will have the discussion. You know, we normally make a decision or come to a conclusion and then ask for public input. I think that's the way I would expect it to proceed, but we can see what happens. We don't even know how far we're going to get in the talk tonight. We don't have a lot of time scheduled for it. There's 6 items on there, so I don't think we're going to have the full discussion. My intention was more to have, okay, we need to revisit this, you know, when are we going to do it, what do we want to talk about?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, you said March 10th was the day we're going to be able to discuss it. So I think...
I said, what I said at that meeting, I believe, was we have it scheduled for March 10th to discuss the update. I didn't say there was going to be public input or anything, you know, it was going to be an open meeting. I want to give it its due, and what it is, this agenda, Keith and I said, look, let's do it on March 10th. And now there's so many other things, I don't think we have enough time to give it its due tonight, so we need to...
I believe that you, the board, the folks on the board, really need to give the public a chance to say their piece about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Crystal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Henry Crystal, Mill Lane. I'd like to make 2 points. First is a question. Does the town have a procedure that you can discuss with us that exists for managing tie votes on a 4-man board of selectmen?
I think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, huh?
Well, you could come up tonight. I mean, is there a procedure? There isn't, you don't know of one.
It takes a majority on,
Right.
through the chair. It takes a majority of those voting, which on a normal vote regular vote, if all four are participating, you would need 3 out of 4.
Right.
And on a supermajority, on something that by statute requires either a two-thirds vote or a higher quantum of vote, then you may need more. For example, we've got under the zoning act, under the zoning act, we have a public hearing on an extensive recreation permit, where essentially the selectmen are acting as the permit granting authority. That requires 4 votes out of 5. So that's all 4 votes in order to pass.
This is a contingency.
And if you don't get them, if you don't get the required vote, then there's no vote.
Stops.
Then there's no vote.
That's interesting. And I was thinking that, 2 to 2 vote is a problem. And I have done some searching in the Mass General laws, and the state seems to be really vague on how this is done. It would seem that there should be a provision somewhere. Somebody's going to be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, tie does not go to the runner.
It might be the TA, it might be Henry Crystal, I don't know. But
I can tell you who it's not going to be.
it needs to be a something. And
Well-
here's, anyway, I won't tie you up with that anymore. but
What's number 2?
take note of it. Number 2.
Oh, Alex, you have something to say? Go ahead.
No, I think being presented with only 4 members on the board, we have now another obligation, and that is to discuss these things to the level that we can have a majority vote. So I think the ante's been upped a little bit with only 4 of us here, and I think we'll live up to it.
Yeah, my second point was, I support what Mr. Coughlin was speaking to. I think there are real issues in financing the fire station inside the levy.
Okay.
And we need to talk about it. And
Yeah.
that's all. How we get to talk about it, that's up to you guys to decide. And we're here asking, we're saying, will this board hear arguments and discussion from the public? That's the question.
Well, I think what I've said before, and maybe I haven't said it in public session, but I think there's a lot of things to be discussed against the board, with the board. And I think the discussions are held by the board, and there's 4 of us here, and those are the ones who go through the long discussion. To bring 15 other people into that whole discussion and make 15 people sitting around a table instead of 4 debating it is not going to be very efficient, whereas if we can discuss everything, hash everything out that everybody else is thinking, what we expect everyone else is thinking, and then open it up to see if there's any points that we missed or any other discussion about what our decision was. I think that's a fruitful way to do it, because it's it's the selectmen's discussion to have, and then to take and hear from the public after we make our decision is the way to do it. But I just think, we've been through similar things before, where having 4 or 5 board members talk about it, and then to bring in 4 or 5 other residents and bring it all in discussion is just not efficient, so. But there will definitely be time for at least a response. So, that's Mr. Coughlin again? Yeah.
I just want to remind the board that we're talking about a $7 million project. And I really believe that the public has a right to discuss that. It's a lot of money. And you're affecting the tax rate of the folks that live in town. And I just think you folks should be open to hear us.
And we will. I have not said that we would not hear anybody.
Okay.
Anything else for public input? Okay. We can go with board member updates. Start down here with Alex. Anything?
I have nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, a couple things. I want to wish the Bronson family the best, and my prayers are with their mother. The other thing is, the Cannon Theater, that's right on the common, very few people know about, right in the mill. They're having their next play, a Bad Year for Tomatoes, starting on March 14th, 15th, and every weekend there through April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So it's a good take if people can make it there.
Great.
Glad to be back from California.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Nice and warm here today, so that's all I got.
I really don't have anything. I think I have the only thing I have to say is I have the little magnets set up on the refrigerator for the 300th, and I'm really looking forward to it. When it was originally funded or started, the planning was 3 or 4 years ago. I thought it was way out, and I can't believe it's here already. I'm just really looking forward to everything. So that's all. So with that, we will go to the patrol officer appointment scheduled. And I believe Deputy Chief King has an introduction and some information on the candidate.
Thank you.
Good evening.
As you know, a few weeks back, we appointed Michael Cook and Nantucket countered. With a detective position opened up, so they counted him with a detective position, so Michael decided he's going to stay on the island. So we continued on our list, certainly not any less than Michael. Brian Jones, as you remember, he's actually been a reserve officer with our department since last June. He's just about finished his field training program. He currently is working for LaSalle College as a patrol officer there. The great thing about Brian is going to be is pretty much as soon as he comes on, he's going to be ready to actually hit the road because he's just finishing up his field training as it is. Again, I think he'll fit in great with the community. He's already shown himself to be a real person. He's a person that we really like. This is a continuation of the process that was for last year to establish the list, which, as you remember, was 2 separate oral boards, one with the sergeants, and then the second oral board was with a town resident, Randy White, also fire chief of Boxborough, and members of both the police and fire departments. And right now, after Brian, we're down to actually one person left on our current list who would have to go to the academy at this point. Brian's the last person ready to go that's actually fully academy trained. So with that, I let you grill Brian for a little bit.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
Just feel free to introduce yourself, and then I think if the board wants to come down with questions, we'll do that.
Okay. Brian Jones. Like the deputy said, I've been here since June as a reserve training. I've been doubled up in the cruiser with Michael Corey for a little while. Recently he just...
Please do not hold that against him. Sorry, Mike.
Learning the roads, learning the town, seeing how the department works. I also, my full-time position, I work late nights over at LaSalle College in Newton. Before that, I worked for the town of Tingsboro as a reserve for a couple of years. While I was there, they sponsored me to go to the full-time police academy. Before that, I did IT work. I also was an auxiliary officer for the town of Chelmsford, where I live. I have my wife and a 10-year-old son who I live with, and that's pretty much who I am.
Alex, would you like to start?
I do. Thank you for sticking it out with us. Have you worked any in Littleton so far?
Not on my own. I've been in a cruiser. Actually, I've been in the cruiser a little bit by myself, but I'm shadowing the full-time officers right now, going to their calls, making some car stops and whatnot.
In that period of time, what did you learn about Littleton?
It's a town that's almost like my own. It's a small town. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to learn the roads and whatnot. There's not a ton of crime here, which is good. A lot of the, that's pretty much what I've learned.
Okay. Later on, I would like to ask some procedural questions, but not sure.
Okay.
Again, actually, what is your feeling toward community policing? What role should a police officer play in the community besides just the basic jobs of an officer?
Other than just fighting crime, basically, I think we should be out getting to know the community, getting to know business owners, anyone else, people that live here, get to know as many people as possible, find out what their concerns are towards crime or whatnot, or things they want us to do, whether it's patrol certain areas, talk to certain people, or stuff like that.
Yes, Jim?
So you're an officer at LaSalle College, and how do you think that experience can translate into a full-time officer here in Littleton?
It is a police officer position. It is a different animal. The schools don't tend to, the kids pay a lot of money to go there, so they don't want us locking people up for certain things. Of course, we have to for certain things, assault and batteries, domestics and stuff like that, but they tend to have us not do that for like alcohol offenses, or we get a lot of noise complaints and stuff like that. We got to use discretion for the most part, and I think that helps here. Using discretion, I think, I like to use discretion. I don't think everything should be black and white. We should be able to decide and make decisions out on the street.
So How many years were you at LaSalle?
I've only been there since September.
When was the last time you went to the academy?
I graduated the academy of January last year.
Very good, thank you.
I think, I'll say this for your benefit, I said it many times, I think you've been through the process, you've been through the rigmarole, I don't have anything else that I could ask. I'd just like to point out to the deputy chief that this is the kind of procedure I'd like to see. We give him a tryout as the reserve officer, and that kind of, there's no commitment either way there, I believe, and if they want to walk, or if we're not ready for them, or we don't feel they're ready for us, then we can pass them over and things like that. So I think it's a good trial process, so if you've gone that far and gone through this process, then I think you're all right.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay. Do you have anything else? Okay, go back to Alex. You have some questions?
You can, we're done interviewing you, you can sit down. I'm
Eddie's.
grilling the deputy chief now. In the process of conducting the interviews and all of that stuff, do you do background checks?
Absolutely.
And to what depth what is the policy for, in general, just speaking in general, for doing the background checks, and how far can they go?
Well, but obviously there's the first layer, which is anything on the criminal background, anything that's in the triple I's, which is the interstate, which basically reaches out to all the different states in the United States to see if there's any criminal record there. The fingerprints are submitted to the FBI, because anyone who has a felony record cannot access the computer system within the state. So that's all done, and then reference checks are done, and follow-ups are done from all their prior places of employment.
Is the background check governed by law, or is it just a policy?
By policy.
Okay.
Well, I should say, policy melded with the law. Obviously, the background check, as far as no felony convictions or anything like that, is governed by the federal government, because that allows us access into the criminal justice information system.
And when you do this, is the background check done when they become a finalist, or offer the job, or where does it come into play?
When we know that it's somebody we want to start moving forward with, at that point, once they've made it past the initial, I should say, let me back up. Before they even get to an interview process, the paper part of it is done. The criminal, background check, any of the computer work, the fingerprints are submitted, and then once we know that they're actually going to move on to the next step, then it's assigned to one of our background investigators, which are typically the detectives or anyone who's been sent to background investigation school, because under policy and under, you have to have someone who's actually been trained on how to do backgrounds, and they go out and finish the background, which is basically check all the, does a complete, job history, and then a complete, they have to go and do their references, and within that, the background investigator has to come up with at least 2 or 3 other references that they did not submit to us. The background investigator has to find those on their own.
I really appreciate that, because that's a lot more information than I was aware of. Thank you.
Anytime.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Brian Jones of Chelmsford, Mass. to the position of patrolman with the Lincoln Police Department, subject to successful completion of medical testing. Second.
A motion been moved and seconded to appoint Brian Jones as to a position of patrolman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Very much. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay, Henry, we're past the first test.
All right. And now we'll move on to Council on Aging. Keith, if you could watch the clock and not let me miss that 7:30, we will, if we're still going with Council on Aging, I'm
Yes.
sure Mr. Duchesne's won't mind if we open and then table it for just a minute.
Right, we'll have 15 minutes as planned for the discussion. We're going to have, in 5 minutes, though, we're going to have to open a hearing and continue.
So I'd like to,
Yeah.
so I turn it over to Council on Aging, who has, we're basically here tonight because the Council on Aging has requested to go with the mission budget as opposed to the guidelines and the goal set by the Selectmen to go with the level service budget. So The floor is yours, Mr. Stetson.
If you will allow me, I'll do the second one first, because that's easy, and we can do it in 5 minutes. We would ask you to reconfirm your vote to purchase the new used van. We have done all of the bidding, and everything is there, and we can buy it tomorrow with our money from the truck gift fund. It will not affect the budget at all, but we need to get your approval in order to do that. Bonnie has already confirmed that we've done everything we need, and she can cut us a check tomorrow. So if you want to vote on that, that's fine.
And they're renting a car in the meantime.
Okay.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to, one, to authorize the Director of Elder and Human Services to procure one 2009 E350 Club van from Quality Van Sales Inc. of Norton, Mass. in the amount of $19,995, and further to vote to expend the funds for this purchase from the COA van gift account previously established by the board at its meeting of December 14, 2009. And two, to authorize the disposal of the existing 2003 Dodge van by sealed bid.
Seconded?
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Enjoy.
Congratulations.
Now, I'm Bob Stetson, I'm the Secretary of the Bloomington Council on Aging. Our chair is indisposed and couldn't be here tonight, she couldn't be at the meeting today. And what we're here for is because all of these folks here are from the Council on Aging, the Friends of the Council on Aging, and we were going to bring the whole senior community and most of the low-income residents, but we figured they wouldn't fit in the room. We are here because we have a crisis. The crisis is that over the last couple of years, we have had a very significant increase in the things that we have had to do for people in the community, those of low income, as well as our seniors, those who have disabilities. Obviously, we need another van because we are into that kind of transportation, but the biggest thing that we have is the need of human services. And of course, in the last 2 years, it was voted that we would become the Littleton Council on Aging, and we have a Director of Human Service, of Seniors and Human Services. And the Human Services portion is the consideration that we have. We originally put into your budget for this year an amount of increase of $13,000, and the reason was because of the tremendous increases in the problems of people in the town that need to be resolved, and they need to be met, and we need to be helping them out, not in giving them money, but in working with them to find sources such as SMOC, which provides heating oil, which obviously has been very important this year. We have 87 people who have needed to have that. It takes an average of about 3 hours to work out the paperwork with them, to get it involved, to get back with them again, and to get them the heating oil assistance. Figure that out by 87 by 3 hours, and you've already got about 2 months of the human resources, of the human services person's time. That, in addition to the fact that we've had over 1,900 requests for people to get information, to be help, all of which have to be done by a person who has privacy and the confidential, the ability to be confidential with the people of the community, which is vitally important in order for them to not be made into a public circus, but to meet their needs in a very appropriate way. There are 180 different residents, and I think you have a packet that has this all in it. 95 residents were given fuel assistance and other assistance. You can see the chart as to what's happened in the last 2 years. And in the last 2 years, the red lines are extremely significant in the kinds of things that the Human Services Director has had to deal with. And what we are suggesting is that over the years, and I've been on the board for about 10 years now, we originally had a 20-hour person, which we got a grant for 8 additional hours. We finally were asked the Friends to give us 2 more hours, and we've been able to provide 30 hours. The 30 hours is not sufficient. It's not sufficient to get that work done, to even meet the working poor. The working poor people can't come to us during the middle of the day. They need to have hours in the evening. So what we're doing is we're planning on working with a 40-hour week. And this is what we're asking for, is $13,000 to extend the human services people to be able to function in such a way that we can get some evenings in and we can work with them. It's a very difficult crisis. I'm a minister. I retired, but I still get involved. I've had some situations with some people that really, really worry me. People who are living on $500 a month in a home in which they have to pay rent and they have to eat. And many times it's not eat. I've had situations where they have had to have assistance, and they need to have the time for someone to work with them on a friendly basis, to get to know them, to get their confidence, to then allow them to have help. The only way that can be done is in a confidential manner, is through the human services people. And we would ask you to consider the possibility of going beyond what I know you have for the entire budget of the town and providing us with the $13,000 extra for that purpose. I have people who can answer your questions. We'd be happy to talk with you when we get through with the 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Right, so we have to open this public hearing, so we can just table that for just a minute. And, is Doug here?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, we're gonna, were you here when I said we're gonna open it, and then we're gonna go back to these people, open the table, and go back to, not these, go back to the COA, and then we're back in. So, the Board of Selectmen, public hearing, special permit, extensive recreation use. The Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, March 10th, 2014, at 7:30 PM at the Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, 01460, regarding the application to modify the special permit issued under Section 173-26, extensive recreation use of the Town of Littleton zoning bylaws, granted to Neshoba Valley Ski Area, located off Powers Road, Littleton, Massachusetts, 01460, to allow the operation of a two-park facility consisting of one snow run and rope tow, a base lodge building, parking, lighting, and other amenities. The applicant has requested the approval of additional snow tubing lanes. No additional lifts will be added to the facility as shown on the approved site plan prepared by Diversified Civil Engineering dated July 22nd, 1999. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, 01460, by noon on Friday, March 7th, 2014, in person at the hearing. Thank you. Keith, was there any mail received?
There was not.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I would like to table this and go back to the COA. And I would just like to, I forgot, I was going to have Bonnie jump in before this to give us a quick update. But, so a little bit more history on this as well, on the total budget. On December 2nd, the Board of Selectmen, we saw that there was a projected deficits $164,000 for level staffing and $1.3 million for mission budgets that were submitted. Bonnie, do you have an update on where those deficits are now? It was 164 back then for level staffing?
It's higher now. It's 279,000 for level staffing.
And for mission?
I think it's the same number. It should be.
About 1.3 million? So, budget deficit is 279,000, that's where we're at, and that's why we went to go with the level staffing. I think we can, if the board has any questions, we can, or we can take this under advisement and see where things play out. We haven't had anyone else come in and ask for their mission budget. Everybody else has pretty much, no one's mentioned anything. And no one's requested time. So I think we can, take this under advisement, but I don't think there's a way to make decision tonight. I don't know if
I'd
you
like
want
to
to.
ask them a couple of questions.
Sure thing, yeah, no, I just, yeah.
What, the growth of the senior population, idea of what that looks like right now?
It happens, I have those figures, Alex. I'm Pamela Campbell, I'm the Director of Elder and Human Services. This is something that I've been thinking about for quite a while. In the last year, I'm relatively new to the job. I've really been looking at where Littleton is right now and where Littleton will be in 2020. And to that end, I've been working with a subcommittee out of the board on needs assessment. We've pulled in some people from UMass who've been very helpful to us to point us to some areas to get information. In 1990, the population for seniors in Littleton was right around 1,100. By 2000, it had climbed to just a little over 1,200, about 1,270 people. It's projected in 2020 to go to 2,326, maybe 2,400, which is a jump of about 83%. This against a state average jump of 48% that's projected. You might ask yourself, why would Littleton have a faster growing elder population than other areas? One reason is we have 3 elder housings, and some towns have nothing. Another is just the aging of Massachusetts, which you probably all are aware of. So in deference to what Bob was saying about looking at the working poor and people who definitely need help from us, we also are looking at a real ramp up with seniors as well, who are going to need more help. And one of the biggest issues that Tina and I have worked on, Tina Mader is our outreach worker, is what I call triage. We have limited resources, we have limited time. Tina and I meet every week, and we struggle over how she's going to use her time and who is going to get less of her attention, because there just are not enough resources to go around.
And we are not dealing just with the seniors, because since we are the only human services agency for the community, we are dealing with all of the needs of the community, not just the seniors. So it is many working poor and some who are not working, who are poor, I mean literally poor, and I can give you some scary examples that we are trying to work with to at least get them to be able to live with dignity within our community and to be with us.
That actually leads up perfectly to my next question, which is how much of an impact is the addition of non-elder human services put on your agency?
Well, the packet that you received with those charts that show the jump, that jump was the year that we changed from just being the Council on Aging to being Elder and Human Services. That was the year that we took on the whole burden of the entire town. And you can see that some of the jumps were over, 100%, in one case over 2,000% jump in requests for need, requests for assistance, requests for referral. And I would also like to say that Bob hit the nail on the head when he said people must feel that they can have confidence that we will deal with them confidentially and that their information will not be disseminated out into the community. Often the first impulse is people say, well, can't you use volunteers? And there is a degree to which one can use volunteers, but when you're talking about sensitive matters, money, mental health issues, even just health issues, the HIPAA laws, the Health Information Patient Protection Act, is very, very clear that we must protect the confidentiality of the people who come to us. And for that reason, that work needs to be done by a licensed social worker, not by even a well-meaning and well-trained, perhaps, volunteer.
The good news about the 13,000 is that by adding 10 hours, we're adding nothing in terms of pension or benefits because she already has them as the 30-hour employee. So it's strictly a matter of adding a 10-hour week at the the 10-hour rate and nothing more, which is a real help, we think.
Thank you for answering those questions. I just wanted to say that you all do a great job at what you do. Thank you.
Pam, you actually answered some of the questions I had about percentages and whatnot. Would all the 10 hours be with Tina's hours? And
It'll all be for outreach, and we're looking to use evening hours exclusively.
right. That's my next question is, how many nights would that be?
3 evenings. It would
3
extend into
evenings
3 evenings.
until 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Trying to get the working poor, and then increasingly we're dealing with the families of elders, and the son, the daughter-in-law, everybody's working. Very hard for them to get in.
There is a wealth of aid available which we can provide them, but we need to have the time to be able to understand the situation, to work with the person, to encourage them, get them to apply, and then go through all of it. I work with Tina on SMOC, which is fuel. It takes 3 hours a person to just get the paperwork ready, not even to get approval, just to get the paperwork ready. It's a very time-consuming for professionals.
Hindsight being 2020, I guess we should have thought about increasing this back when we brought the human services.
We asked.
back then. But I guess, Bob, you answered the question about the benefits, and Tina's already getting the benefits, so it's strictly a salary thing. You know, I think the board members that have already spoken had said, you know, what a great job you do. I know having an elderly parent live with me and having the access to the COA and Tina and everybody is just huge for me personally. Where my mom just turned 88, and you know that those reverse roles that we find ourselves in is difficult sometimes. So it's good to have a resource. So.
Okay, I think it's a lot of information that you presented. I think you presented well, and I think well, we have to take it under advisement. We can't make any decisions tonight, I don't think. We still have the gap, so I don't, you know, we have to wait and see where the numbers shake out, and then we have to figure out why one department needs it more than another, and things like that. If we do get into a position where we have the money, I believe that's where we're at right now. We can take it under advisement and see where this shakes out. We have a lot of assumptions that we're waiting for, and if those come in, it may be more money to move around, I think, yeah.
I don't know whether there's anybody from the board or the friends that wants to say.
Yeah, I see a couple hands up, so I was gonna wait, so I didn't know if you had, I was gonna finish up and see if you had anything, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I have one
Yeah.
more question. I mean, this is something you want to start fiscal year 15.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to start it in fiscal year 12, but I'm thinking I'd like to do
There's
that.
water under the bridge.
And you know, what I've given you is a rather cold piece of facts and, you know, figures and comparisons. Underneath that, it's people. When Bob talks about working with SMOC, he's talking about families where kids are in homes that are cold. Tina's working constantly with people that are food insecure. They're not really sure where the money's going to come from.
I was
for the food
working
in the
with a lady
household.
in my church who had 3 heaters in her house because she could not afford to pay for the oil. This is the kind of thing that we're dealing with here in Littleton now.
And increasingly, we're seeing homeless people. No one believes that there are homeless people in Littleton, but we're the ones who see them.
Have you tried living out of your car?
Right.
Yes, sir.
I'm George Sanders, and I'm a member of the Council on Aging Board. I just wanted to point out the fact that when the town came before you and asked to increase the director hours from 30 hours to 40 hours, the trade-off was between Mark and I believe the gasoline that was getting reimbursed was like $10,000 at that time. So the town had to come up with a little bit more money to make that 40 hours on that 10 hours for the salary, for the switch there. But the COA, in terms of Tina, she has always been doing this social need for the town, which she hasn't gotten paid for it, and it's been going on for years. So when this was done, this was not even taken in consideration. What they did was change the title on the director and gave it that name. And nothing was ever discussed about the service now that is going to be needed in terms of the COA providing this to the citizens of Littleton. So once they knew that they could come, then this is where the increase has jumped. And we've been doing the same as we've always been doing it, trying to help those that we could. And Tina been overworked in this area because the director was not doing that. She had the title under that, but she was switched into the Mark side and applying that 10 hours on that side. So Tina was not getting a relief of any of the change that was made with the director's job.
So it's kind of like an unfunded mandate where you were given additional services to provide that were already being provided, but they were being provided officially now, but there was no additional funding or hours, you know, yeah, kind of stuff that happens. The state gives us unfunded mandates all the time, and, you know, I see that similarity to the situation that you just described. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Ms. McCray, yeah.
Hi, Barbara McCray, and I'm on the Friends of the Council on Aging. And I'm going to say that Bob did a great job, and Pamela did a great job, and George also. You know how both of our boards feel about Tina. We really appreciate everything that she has done. I agree with the fact that she has all the benefits We don't have to hire somebody else. It would be great for her to get those extra hours. We really need her. Not only that, but the seniors, seniors need us. They really do. A lot of us seniors are okay, but there are those who aren't. And Tina is there for them, and they trust her. That's a big thing. They trust her, they like her, and they want to come to her. So we need those extra hours, and I hope that we can get them for her.
Well, thank you. I think looking, like you said, looking at the numbers is just, like you said, it's hard, but hearing a little more discussion brings a lot more to light, so appreciate you coming in. I don't know if there's anything else anybody has to say. Okay. So, Bonnie, I guess we can, you have this somewhere, this request somewhere that you can have it, you must have a margin of, items we can't afford somewhere.
Yes. This is high on the priority list.
Yeah, okay.
Find some of those surplus funds, Bonnie.
Should we, Mr. Chair, should we try to give her some indication of where we would place this in the priorities?
Well, we'd have to have all the priorities. I don't know, what else do we have? Competing priorities,
I think they're on the agenda. It's called the school department.
So, if you'd like to provide direction, I don't know, I think I'd want to hear how much money we have and who's asking for what and things like that before I try to prioritize. I'm not ready to prioritize tonight, because I just don't know what else is out there.
I can go
So,
with that.
yeah, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can, we'll have that discussion eventually, so.
Yeah, once some of these variables come down a little bit. All right, I do want to get back to this public hearing, but Mr. Simone, do you have something?
Thank you. Chris Simone, 92 Whitcomb. When this comes back up, could you also share with us the potential sources? So clearly, having our seniors not have to choose between food and heat, and sometimes it's neither, isn't acceptable. So but I understand, I very much understand the thoughtful approach in which you've outlined. But when this comes back, can you share with us the potential sources of the funds? So not just yes or no, but here's where we may get it from, here's where, the inverse prioritization list. Because this simply can't result in no.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes it's just let you speak, so you can correct me because you have to say something. But I think there's a lot of variables now about state aid, so it's not all of a sudden we're going to have a new source of income. It's some of the incomes that we've estimated.
As well as some of the expenses that we have estimated.
Right.
So I'll go through the list of the things that we're monitoring as we get closer to town meeting.
But there's state aid, and then some of the costs are
The health insurance
health insurance,
premiums,
yeah.
school department budget.
Staff and employee salaries are all locked up.
They're all fixed
But-
and programmed.
Yeah, but it's mostly the state aid and...
State aid, local receipts, the school department appropriation, and the health insurance appropriation.
Okay, so those are the sources, and so it's the same income.
Revenue sources, but I'm talking about trade-offs. What can we give up? What can we give back? What can we forego to make sure that this $13,000 happens? That's the list I'm talking about.
And we're open to suggestions. Anyone wants to bring the budget in and say, hey, you can steal 13 from here, you want to steal 10 from here, and hey, we're all ears if someone else wants to do that
That's what we're
for us.
talking
yeah.
I was told I couldn't do that.
That's what we're talking about. But that kind of list, prioritization, and that kind of visibility will help us together figure out where exactly we're going to find the money, because it has to be found.
That's what we do. That's what we do all from pretty much December till April. That's what we do.
He wants to see the hit list.
Yeah.
But,
All right, with that,
We thank you very
guys,
much.
speaking of where we get some money from?
Yes.
We thank you very much for that.
Thank you for thank you. Actually, we're going to go back to the public hearing for extensive recreation. So, Mr. DeShanes, would you like to start, or you want me to give a little background here? So my understanding is that there was a permit issued back in '99 for a two-park, and it said one lift in the permit, but there are two lifts shown on the plan, is it? The four lifts shown on the plan, and then there was difference between trails and tracks and runs and things we're talking about. So, exactly. Why don't we let it settle down here in a minute? Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Douglas DeShane, representing PAMF. With me, Al Fletcher, the president of PAMF, Inc. And you are correct, this board, the members that made up this board in 1999 issued to PAMF a special permit to operate the tube park under your extensive recreational bylaw. That decision specifically referred to a plan And that decision did state that it was for one tube run and a rope tow. Yet, if you look at the plan, it clearly shows 2 sets of lifts and an entire area that was marked as tube runs. So there seems to be a little disconnect between some of the words used in the decision and the plan on which your decision was based. That's not necessarily unrealistic in that back in 1999, this was only the second tube park ever permitted in the state of Massachusetts. So I don't think any of us had a whole lot of experience on what a tube run was versus tube runs versus lanes versus whatever. Nevertheless, the park was developed and we did pull the necessary building permits for the lifts and the electrical and all of the work that was done. And in fact, the park as you see it today was completed in 2003. So things haven't changed since 2003. However, this past winter, it was brought to our attention that perhaps there was an inconsistency between what was on the ground and what was allowed under the permit and to some extent what the plan depicted. And I've provided you both a copy of the original plan as well as what the site looks like today, and again, as it's looked since 2003. And what you'll see, and what jumped out at me was that while the original plan said tube runs, sort of located between the 2 lifts or sets of lifts, today's facility actually has a couple of tube runs on either side of the lifts. So it is possible that one could see that as an expansion of the area that was used for the tube runs. My clients didn't feel that that was inconsistent with your original decision because whether you have one, 100-foot wide run, in which case it would kind of be a free-for-all with the tubes, or if you break that up into some number of lanes for the tubes to run down, you're still using the same area for the most part. And what really dictates use on a permit like this is capacity, an uphill capacity. So no matter how many lanes you have, the number of people and the extensiveness of your use is really dictated by how many people you can get up the hill. So as long as your lifts stay the same, you're not increasing capacity. You might have 12 runs instead of 10. It just gives people more of a choice. You're not creating any more use. There's no greater use. What dictates your use is how many people you get up the hill. So we haven't changed that from the original permit. We really haven't. I think the original permit's a little inconsistent where it refers to a run and a rope tow, where the plan on which it was approved showed runs and lifts. So again, some inconsistency. So we're here tonight to ask the board to essentially, at your decision, either amend the permit or issue a new permit, essentially saying that what can operate there is what's on the plan that you have now, the new plan, because we've clearly identified exactly what's on the ground today, and I think it eliminates the inconsistencies. We're not expanding capacity, we're not asking to expand capacity. Certainly, if there was ever an effort to do that, we would have to come back for a new permit. But what we'd like to do is at least eliminate these perceived inconsistencies between what was approved in '99 and what's been operating since 2003.
Keith, do you have anything? Before I go, I think, go ahead, do you have anything?
Nothing to add. We have the
Okay.
building commissioner. He was here.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if you had any. So what I'm seeing, because we've talked about this before, and what I'm seeing is we have a plan and a permit that just weren't inconsistent, and that were inconsistent, and didn't fully describe, and a lot of things that weren't defined. So in addition to your plan, is there anything else that goes along this to define what a run is? And, I mean, is there any narrative with the application, or is it?
Well, again, it's hard.
Prevent this from happening again, I guess.
Sure, I think.
And we can send you guys an email with what we think would make the most sense based on what the plan reads.
The new plan, which shows what's there today, we've identified the tube slope run number 1 and number 2, and we've shown you where the area of disturbance is and the tree lines. Within that snow tube slope 1, I don't know how you can tell me, but in a given year, it could be 10, it could be 11, right? I mean, sort of just how you plow them at the beginning of
Depends
the
on whether it's
season.
cold or not.
Right, you know, but what's important is that the area that's going to be used for these tubes coming down, whether they're in 10 3-foot lanes or 3 10-foot wide lanes, that area is the same in the areas depicted on this plan. So any kind of condition that said the use of the tube runs will be limited to that area, then we don't have to worry about whether there's 8 of them or 9.
Yeah, right.
Because that's just going to vary by the width of what you make at the beginning of the year.
Snow out there.
Yeah, it's how you pile the snow.
Right, Doug?
I had a couple of questions about what delineates the lanes now?
They're snow, they're built by snow, so it's a wide, imagine a
No
wide.
structure whatsoever.
No,
delineates.
no,
And they
imagine a
change?
wide open kind of pasture area that's got a decline to it, an incline to it, and they're built out of snow with a machine.
So it changes from season to season, or change during the season even?
Yeah, both.
So they're always in motion.
Yeah.
In the areas that you have shown on the plan, can you relate to that in some sort of square footage per slope?
Sure, we could get you that number. The engineers could easily determine that.
The purpose for asking that is, they've come to try to clear up some of the inconsistencies, and I think one of the best ways to clear that up is to say an area not to exceed so many square feet in the permit.
Can you
And
square
that's
feet
pretty
or
clear.
acreage, whichever you like.
And the other thing is, and I noticed on the plan, this actually doesn't show the access road that comes up from, there's not a drawing of the access road that comes into the facility.
That would be, that would be out here. Great Road's here. We just showed it
We just show
as
the
it comes
bottom
into the,
And what's the length of that?
from this point out to Great Road?
Yeah, but I'm assuming that that piece there is delineating the stone wall, and that's probably the high point on the land.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
So from that point out to the road is what?
From there? Yeah, probably about 500.
500 feet, 600 feet from Great Road till you actually get,
It's right where the field is.
yeah, it's the length of the field, the depth of that field.
And is the wording specific about that at all?
I think it is, but it's on the curb cut permit was separate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be on
But
the.
the footprint of the access right-of-way is not delineated in the permit at all.
No, because it was a use permit, not a,
Yeah,
sort of a dimensional permit.
Was there a permit required for the driveway?
No.
For the driveway?
Well, we got a curb cut
Yeah, we have a
from
curb
Mass
cut from the
Highway
city.
to put it in originally,
And that
but
was through Mass Highway?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the ZBA for the sign too, didn't it?
yeah, we went to ZBA for sign approval.
Yeah, the curb cut was issued by the state, because
Now,
it's,
all this land is zoned residential?
Yes.
In your zoning board of appeals decision, granted you relief where?
at the road for a sign.
For the sign.
For the sign. Okay. So this is a non-conforming use? Am I correct?
No, extensive recreation is an allowed use within the residential zone by special permit of the Board of Selectmen.
The variance from the ZBA then was for?
A sign.
Because, what did you need variance? You needed a bigger sign, you needed a sign period,
It's,
or?
I don't,
It was
sign-
size.
it's the dimensions of the sign within a residential area.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I just wanted, it seemed like Alex was asking that, and I didn't hear an answer on it. Okay.
My only comment, Mr. Chair, is that, I would like to see the rest of the drawing, and I would like to see, this is a nice drawing, it delineates what's there, but I'd like to see more specifics about it, so that 4 years from now, we aren't doing this again.
No, it's a good point.
One of the things that happens here is, you come back and you talk about this, and you have to run the gamut of what comes out of that discussion. And so I'm sure some of that will...
We're happy to provide you a bigger picture that would show you from Great Road all the way to the site so you could see the entrance road. And then we can have our engineers actually calculate the area that is used specifically for the tube runs themselves. And we can have that identified so that it'll...
And you're okay with identifying the permit by square feet?
Sure. Well, I mean, we'll put the square feet on the plan, and then you can refer to that plan and the square foot, right?
Yeah, or acreage, whichever. you
Well,
want.
yeah, I mean, just some
Just area.
numerical
Area,
area.
square foot or acres, either.
Now, do you want that exclusive for the runs themselves? Right?
The area, what I was.
Like, you don't care, we're not gonna tell you the area of the parking lot or the area of the
No,
building.
That hasn't changed.
No, my interpretation
none of that's
is that,
changed.
my interpretation is that we had a disconnect somewhere between the number of runs and what was built.
The area
So I think
that
we
the
need
runs were
area
gonna be
of-
located,
yeah, the area
of the runs.
Calculate the area of the runs. You know, run area 1, run area 2 label on the plan and what they are, and that way we have it tied down to, you can't go outside this box. That your,
I was not referring to anything else other than a way we can be very specific.
I understand, yeah.
and number of lifts,
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
and that should be stated somewhere in the capacity of those lifts. What's your uphill capacity on those lifts?
Okay.
Stated, I don't need you to tell me now, but, you know, yeah.
Grab it off the diagrams.
I'd like to know, on the other questions that I asked, of the roadway, how much is, you know, how is that deeded? How much are you taking for the easement, right away, whatever that is? I'd like to know what all that is.
Yeah, the roadway is actually built on a separate parcel of land that's connected to this. So this is technically now sort of a narrow strip in. It's what, 50 feet wide, I think? And that's where the driveway is. And then when you,
Wider than that, but yeah.
is it a little wider? Whatever it is, it's a defined lot. It's a separate deeded lot that PAMF owns. And it comes right into the bigger part where the tube park is. So it's one lot. It's with a narrow strip and then the big opening. We'll depict that on the plan, though. It's easy enough. We have it.
And will that deeds it directly to the tubing park?
It's owned by PAMF, yes, the same company that owns the lot that the tubing park is on, yes.
It's actually all one lot now.
It's all one lot.
It's all one lot. We did that a few years ago.
Okay.
If I could, I just want to thank you for being here. In my opinion, I don't know why you're here. I take a look at it much differently. I take a look at the hill we have out back and what difference does it make where these runs are when it's the same amount of land that's there. I think you say it was brought to your attention. I don't know, do we have people who are going out and checking these things? I just don't understand how this came about. And do we have tubing police that are out there counting lanes? No, I'm serious. Honestly, you've run a great business. There haven't been any problems. I don't believe Roland has been a complaint, has there? There's no complaints by the town, and yet our town government jumps in on things like this. I don't think we even need to be here. But to satisfy it, to make sure it doesn't happen again, maybe I'm glad you put the permit in. But in my opinion, I mean, only so many people can go up and only so many people can come down. If you have 2 runs or 8 runs, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care.
I agree, but I think, as Alex said, just to clean things up, that way there are no questions.
There's no questions
And,
about
you
the
know, going
verbiage.
back to 1999, as you said, Doug, no one knew what a tubing park was. So when you see runs on here, and it said run on the permit, and just to clean things up, I think it's a housekeeping type of thing, it'd be a good thing, but I agree with Joe. You know, the tubing police,
Well, I guess can I ask the question how it did come about? What's the?
Let me.
Oh, you think it's not important?
Well, I think it's suffice to say that, as you know, the Fletcher's land and the land surrounding this tube park have been, you know, on the forefront of a lot of people's minds for a number of years via rezoning attempts and overlay attempts and development attempts. And so it's been in the spotlight, and in part in reviewing what was going on here and there. Someone may have felt that there was an inconsistency.
I appreciate your innocence there. And Doug came to me and pointed something out, that he was called out on this. And then I followed up and determined and found out that it was Mark Montanari and former Selectman Brownson that brought this to your attention.
Correct.
And and at that point, you called me to say, hey, what are we going to do? And, you know, we talked about it. I gave you some suggestions to write a letter and come to the board. And that's how we got here. Right? Whether or not, yeah, do they probably have to be here? Probably not. But while we're going through this process, can we tie up some loose ends and make it work and get something that's going to be no controversy in the future?
Yeah, that's all we're here.
That's fine. So my other comments, you know, yes, the runs, the uphill capacity, any plans that are submitted should be stamped. Engineer, surveyor, I don't care, just as long as they're stamped showing the information is accurate, someone's on the hook for that. And then if you have to do any type of narrative that explains anything, I guess we call them assuming slopes, and that doesn't define anything. That's slope A, area equals, slope B, area equals, and then, that's how you're gonna be tied into.
Within that slope, whether you put 2 runs or 20,
Right.
it's immaterial. So I like the idea of defining the slope areas.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that brings us to the point of whether or not we need to, does the board in general feel that the facility is keeping up with the intent of the existing special permit? In general?
I agree. I would like to see them provide us that information before we render our final decision.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to see where we're going with this. So if we feel that they're that they're in harmony with their existing permit, then there's no reason to deny or go through any other application process, just go through this.
Yeah, and when I wrote that was a consideration, because like at least 1 or 2 members, we kind of felt that we were within the intent and purpose of the original permit, but quite frankly, in the time that's gone through, and based on what was said here, I think option 2 or 3 is what we'd really like to consider, and that is either modify the old permit to clean it up or issue a new one that cleans it up. But either way, I'm not sure that just saying you're within the intent of your old permit, you don't need anything, maybe that wasn't such a good suggestion.
I wasn't saying that we didn't need anything, but Keith, where are we at this right now, and what did you recommend as far as reissuing, issuing a new permit? Do you have any recommendation?
I think it would be, I would defer to whatever the applicant's counsel feels would be a better, more secure outcome. As he's indicated, he had a menu of things he could have done. He's gone the longest route to get here and might want to therefore have the advantage of, whatever.
Again, a modification of the permit, I think, is the simplest and yet legally solid, because that way you don't have to sort of start over, recreate all the conditions of a permit, make sure you have all the findings of the permit. I'd rather suggest you just modify that permit in the following manner, and I'll even draft for you, if you'd like, an order of conditions that'll lay out a specific description of the 2 slopes, I want to use right there, and all of that. And just for your consideration, I'll make it easier.
And I've been attending enough ZBA meetings to know that what it would be appropriate for you to do is you can continue this hearing to a later date. You will be presented with your draft decision that council will provide you for review, and you can adopt it
And the plan.
in that form at that future meeting.
So I think amendment.
If it addresses all your concerns.
You have something else? Okay, go ahead.
One of the things we need to bear in mind in whatever you bring forward is none of us may be sitting here when the next question arises. And I think that's part of the problem here, is that what seemed perfectly clear then, time passed, memories faded, understandings changed, and here we are today. So for me, what's important is that the next board that's sitting here looking at your application is looking exactly at the facts that we're looking at, and not leave anything to memory.
Imagination.
And, if you put all the information on the plan, that's fine. We don't need to go through any extensive narrative. It's all, the areas are shown on the plan, the uphill capacity on the plan, that's what you feel is sufficient, and that you feel it meets our needs, then that's fine. So, do we continue or close?
No, I think you'd want to continue until date certain.
What do you have?
Next meeting, next regular meeting is the 24th of March. Is that enough time? Do you need?
Can we push out two
Then it would
meetings?
be,
I've just got a real tough schedule the next 2 weeks.
I'm out of town on the 24th.
Sure.
So whenever you meet in April.
It'll,
June, first meeting?
yeah, after the snow season. Just in case,
April.
just in case there's any complications here.
So for April, we have 14th or 28th, I think, something?
Either would be fine, whatever's convenient for you.
We can sort of leave that a little bit open and just.
No, we can't.
No,
It has
you
to
have
be
to
to a date
continue the
certain.
hearing to a date certain.
Date and time certain, right?
Yeah, so if you want to continue until Monday, April 14th at 7:30.
9 o'clock? 7:30?
7:30.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to continue the public hearing for the Neshoba Valley Ski Area 2 Park facility to April 14th at 7:30. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Now we're on to school department. Good evening. Does everybody want to approach, or are you going to speak from the cheap seats?
But for the moment, I'm just going to introduce Rita here in a moment. But you may recall when we had our joint FinCom Board of Selectmen meeting on 5 February, we presented the requirements for the FY15 year to the FinCom and to you. We've been working those for some period of time over the preceding months, and then came up with the final numbers there. And also included in the letter that I gave to the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom last week as to what those requirements are. But also at that meeting, the way I ended it with you all was that we owe you those requirements as a school committee. It's what's necessary to educate our children here in town. But equally so, we owe you validation as to why those requirements exist. And that's why we're here this evening. Dr. Rita Detweiler is our Director of Pupil Services. Rita's responsible for roughly a third of the entire school budget when it comes down. And she's going to speak to some reasons that drive the increases you've seen over the years in that part of our school budget. So in some small way tonight, we'd like to be able to validate some of those numbers that we've given you previously. And they sometimes really get down it, though, it's not all that small when it's a third of the entire school budget. So with that, Dr. Detweiler.
Thank you. Well, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board.
Oh, welcome.
I'm happy to be associated with a well-functioning school system that you have, and also happy to get to know the town of Littleton. My husband and I live in Deerfield, but we're thinking of moving back to the Boston area, and certainly Littleton is very appealing. I'm hoping one of my children will also settle in this area.
Only
A lot to
people
offer.
from Deerfield feel that Littleton's in the Boston area.
Well, that's true, because there's a lot beyond Deerfield even, but no, there's very much so. Again,
The Red Sox game in the same day.
as Chairman Avella said, oftentimes the discussion around the school's budget is around the costs, but I thought it would be helpful to have some of the perspective on the services also. And so again, I know from the time that I attended public school, the look of the population that's currently in schools is very different. And some of that is driven by legislation at both the state and the federal level, that the goal of that legislation is to provide equal opportunity, equal access for all students. So now we have students in our schools who were never there before. We have students who have disabilities, learning disabilities, also students with significant medical or emotional needs. We have students for whom English is not their first language, and we've also have expanded the age range of students. We now serve students with disabilities from the time they turn 3 until they turn 22 years old. And many of the services that are called special education services also really benefit the general population. So there are academic services. Again, the primary cost in this area is really personnel. We have staff now who are responsible for diagnosing the learning disabilities, and then staff, usually a special education teacher at each grade level, and also specialists such as speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists who help remediate those disabilities. Again, I've come from other districts, and it's helpful because, again, the comparison, I think, across districts gives you some perspective, and you really do have an adequate and appropriate level of staffing for your special education academic services. Another area that I think is a real benefit is one of the strengths that I think is in the Littleton Public Schools already is your use of technology. And this can be especially beneficial for students with special needs. This is an area of interest of mine, and I continue to try to introduce this as the plans come forth for each student. A good example is students who are very intelligent but are dyslexic. So we provide them with laptops where they have text-to-speech. Certainly that allows them to be independent in their classrooms and access information. We also have to have on staff now an individual who really does help meet the needs of the students for whom English is not their first language. And that individual has been on staff for about 5 years now. We have the area of physical health. Each school is staffed by a full-time nurse, and you can see this serves the general population as well as the special needs population. And this level is necessary to ensure the safety of all students, especially those with allergies and special medications. The area of social, emotional, and behavioral health, this is an important area. And again, the burden of society has really come into schools to address some of these needs, where again, in the past, that wasn't the case. We have guidance counselors or adjustment counselors in each school, and 2 psychologists who serve the entire district. This is an area where I think Littleton is still needing to provide some more support, but we're hoping to address that. We have out-of-district placements. This again looks like a large area of the budget, but in reality, it is not that large. It's appropriate for a district this size because there are a handful of students for whom their needs exceed what we can provide. These are children who are usually severely autistic, who have very significant emotional needs, or who are medically fragile. And then transportation is the last area. This is an expensive area. This is a mandated area, and it's an area that currently is not reimbursable through the circuit breaker. I know that there's an attempt to introduce legislation to provide that reimbursement for that, and that would be very helpful and I think appropriate. But overall, I think this is a well-run district. I think it's something that you all can be very proud of because it does provide high-quality services, I think, in a very cost-effective manner. Any questions?
Alex, you'd like to start?
Very well presented. 1/3 of the budget is special ed now. Is that?
Oh, yes, that's
correct,
what
yes,
Chuck has always said, yes.
Now, you mentioned something about transportation. Is that transporting the students outside our schools to a different school?
For the most part, yes, that is, and that's mostly through the CASE collaborative.
And how many students do we have that actually
Are transported?
transported?
I'd say we probably have about 40 students right now out of district placements. The majority, well, I'd say about 15 of those are in CASE collaborative programs.
You know, I think, again, it was well presented. It's very difficult for us to understand, you know, what that special education 1/3 budget means. To have somebody come forward and speak and hear the actual needs of the students and the population of the school is very helpful. So thank you.
I think, yeah, I think it was some good information. I'd like to hear more. I think we probably have to, there's a fine line of what you could share versus privacy. But I think you provided, I'd like to hear more, but I think we'll stop there just to make sure we don't tread on any lines. I think it's very interesting to hear the different types of services that you hear about. I know some of the special ed kids, but there's so much more out there, and there's so much good that we do for people, so.
It makes a difference, certainly.
Yeah. It's like, it's almost what the COA did, you're putting a face on it, because you know, a lot of us may not deal with the students, but when you do, or then you talk to me, we realize, you know, the attention that some families are getting, and it's a great service. The only question I had, you said that you thought there should be more support for psychologists, district-wide. You said we have 2 psychologists?
2 psychologists, yes.
And those are full-time?
Yes, they are.
And I guess, what is that basis? How urgent is the need? And what would the solution be?
Right. Well, the 2 psychologists that we currently have, their primary role is to assess children. They do all of our psychological and educational testing. And so they have very little time really left over for the counseling component. That really falls to the guidance counselors. And this recommendation for additional support comes out of the NEASC study from the high school. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So again, that's another set of eyes that have come in and said, you know, this is an area that really the district should be looking at to try to increase. Currently, we have the Emerson Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's being administered to our students, actually this week. This is a really valuable survey. It is it's a questionnaire where students in 6th, 8th, and then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade are asked about some of their behaviors. It's anonymous because we hope to get honest information from them, but it does give some insight into what adolescents nowadays are faced with and what kind of problems they most likely will also bring into the school. And again, looking at that is very important. It can be a little disconcerting sometimes because we hope our students don't have to deal with these behaviors. But again, it points to the need for these support, and I think that's mostly at the high school level. We're happy to support these students.
So what would the solution be? Did they give any recommendations after that study? 2 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff? Did they give any indication, or is?
Well, I think that's under discussion. I think, again, perhaps 1 full-time staff to assign that to the high school would be appropriate.
Okay. And what about the future? I mean, a third of the budget, I know when I was going to school, it probably wasn't a third of the budget, but
Right.
are you in a position to say what you see going? I mean, how long, have you been in this business for a long time? And are you seeing trends? And are
Right,
you,
right.
you know, can you use that to make any type of prediction, or can the school department make
Sure.
any type of prediction where this is heading?
Right, well, I've been in the field of education for a long time. I was a school psychologist for many years. I actually served on the school committee back in my town too, so I know some of the difficulties of trying to make sense out of why there's so much money going to what looks like a small percentage of the population. You also have to think, though, that we look at the costs that are going out, but there are also revenue streams coming in. There's the circuit breaker,
Yeah.
which does provide reimbursement for some of these costs. Because that's an attempt to say that a school district really should have a cutoff point after which they don't have to bear the costs of the full cost of educating these students, because it can be
Right,
quite
right,
expensive. So that's usually about, it has been about $45,000 this past year. You have to get to that level, and then you can start to look at reimbursement. Some of the trends I think that are driving the costs are that there really are more children who are fragile coming into our school districts. Certainly there have been children for whom medical advances have saved their lives when they were infants, when they were newborns. I've dealt with children who have really had 25 weeks of gestation. And you think, my goodness, after 25 weeks, you know, your chances of being without any damage can diminish. I certainly have seen children now who really after 25 weeks are fine. So there's so many things that can happen in a person's life. I think there's a lot of emotional issues that I hear certainly people talking about. I think certainly they feel that the population in general now of children is more anxious. So I think there are things in society that make students perhaps needier, puts pressure on families. I think there's a lot more economic pressure on families, and that I think can also filter down to students and cause them to have, you know, feelings of not being as well adjusted. So I certainly see some of those increasing. I think we're also more able to identify what is a special need. I think there were lots of children prior to this who probably did not like school and struggled through school, felt that they were not intelligent, where in reality I think a lot of children with learning disabilities are very intelligent. They just have some glitches that they're not going to learn in the same way. Think of dyslexia, right? I don't think there was an appreciation that you could be very intelligent but just not able to decode. So I think that's part of it also.
Right. So it's interesting. So it's nothing that's going to go, it's nothing that's going to decrease, so it's really something that, yeah, interesting.
I think there's a way to look at servicing these children through the general ed remedial services that we're looking at, and I think that's a way to still see that these children need services. Maybe it's just not all special ed that provides services, it's general ed. And our classroom teachers get better at addressing addressing the needs of those students. Because overall, you do have a very high caliber of staff. I'm very impressed by that.
Right. Okay. All right, anybody else? Or the public, does the public have any questions? This was a pretty interesting presentation. I didn't know if anybody else had any questions.
I would only suggest that I was a director of a special needs campus in Groton when I first moved into town. And there we had 40 people, young people and adults, who were mildly mentally retarded. And the problem was that everybody in the state wanted everybody to be mainstreamed. And so the schools took on the reality of moving them into the school systems where before they were a part of these campuses. It has made a significant difference in terms of how much special need there is. And then, of course, the state has been constantly defining more broadly what special needs are, and that's added mandates. It isn't a matter of our choice, it's a matter of their choice, and we have to fill it.
Right, right. Unfunded. Mr. Clegg has his hand up first.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but since what Bob said is so similar to my own experience, I once upon a time used to be the headmaster at the Alpha Omega School, which was on the other side of town in Littleton. That was all DYS kids. They were all technically special ed just by virtue of that designation. And it occurred to me while Bob was speaking, that program's gone now. Where are those kids? Most of them are right back in the public school system. So it's, it's not something that, these folks are doing anything other than reacting to and serving the kids, as the hand they're being dealt.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am, did you have something?
Oh, yes, I'm Marjorie.
vice chair of the Council on Aging, but also a parent of 2 children that were in the Littleton school system, and it doesn't go away. And unfortunately, years ago, we didn't have what we have now, and I had to pull my son out of Littleton and paid for it out of pocket myself. But I wanted to also say that some of the issues that we were speaking about in the Council on Aging, as far as younger families, children are affected when there's problems at home, and so you're dealing with overflow there too. I mean, maybe we could be helpful in some of the things that Tina's doing, and it also works to help the whole picture.
We
for
take care of
children.
them after they leave the school.
Well, no, but you also we have a lot of people that are
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just really support education, and I'm hoping that we can find a happy way to meet all the needs.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Thank you, I think, thank you very much.
Based on the comments and the questions, our entering assumptions that folks have a pretty good understanding of regular education. You know, it's changed certainly significantly from when we were in school. Nevertheless, the portion of the budget, the portion of the education that Rita deals with has changed significantly so. And that's why we want to present that to this evening. We know we're going into the budget season here, about to make some final decisions. The pedagogies that are involved with Rita's part of the budget, though, are very dynamic. And the children that go in and out, she mentioned 40 children, give or take, go out of district. You say, well, that's a pretty small number. We're looking at 1,600 total children in our district. But each one represents a possible, sizable amount of money. And that's why we budget the way we do and design it. So certainly any questions that you may have on what we presented to you as a joint committee, and then certainly anything in the letter that I sent to you last week, hoping to answer any of those questions for you all also.
That segues right into this next thing, where you have the budget hearing on Thursday.
That's correct.
Right, so these questions can all be asked at that point, and, or they might be covered, answered before they're asked. But the budget hearing for the school committee is on Thursday the 13th at 7 p.m. at the police station community room.
Yes. And thanks for bringing that up, because as I put in the letter, invitation to you all and to the FinCom.
Yeah.
And certainly the entire community.
Yeah, open to the public, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's hear from the Facilities Assessment Prioritization Working Group.
Very dynamic.
Dynamic? I don't know, these guys, look how they're jumping out of their seats ready to come up here.
What's needed? Facility.
We've been through that, right?
Yes, we have. What's an envelope? What's an envelope? I now know what a building envelope is. Thank you, Steve.
I do now. Mr. Cole, what do you have for us?
I'll defer to Steve.
Oh,
He
sorry,
is-
Mr. Moore, what do you have for us?
I'm his assistant.
Okay.
Our team.
All right.
February 26th, the Facility Assessment Priority Working Group met for the first time. Recognized the fact that because there were so many projects to choose from, it would be advantageous to categorize
Excuse me, the chat is just a little bit distracting. Good, thank you. I'm sorry.
It would be advantageous to categorize all these projects into what we came up with was 7 different categories. And in descending order of importance, we came up with life safety, code compliance, building envelope, building systems, IT security, interior finishes, and building site and grounds.
Bob.
So the working group then asked Bill and myself to get together and put all these projects into these different categories, which we did on Saturday. We then sent that list over to Keith and Bonnie, and we restricted it to 3 years, 2013, 14, 15, because we were too distracted with the 20-year plan. So that's where we are. I would like to say that the list that we put together only represents 7 buildings, the 4 schools, the police department,
Houghton, and the town hall and library. So it does not, it's not all-inclusive of all the needs of the township.
Which is the limit of the study that we had done, right? It was
Yes.
also on those 7 buildings.
Correct.
So, I don't know if it was stated clearly, but basically, you took all the priorities for the first 3 years of this study, where all this stuff was supposed to be done.
Yep.
And you're starting to prioritize them into...
We categorize them.
Categorize them and then prioritize them.
Well, prioritizing is going to start this Wednesday at the next...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're getting closer, and basically what it is a process update, and you had seen at our last meeting, the sort of the summary, those long spreadsheets that we have. And we didn't share those again, but basically what they did was they went through and rated them through page after page using these 7 criteria, and now the next step is to sort of sort that information and to actually come up with a working list of, I'm guessing it might be 10 or so, give or take, prioritized facility projects, which would account for the $450,000, perhaps more, that Bonnie has allotted in the budget. So we will be back with further information by the time the board has its next meeting, which we will need to consider when that is. There's several articles that will require a vote, not tonight, but at a meeting between tonight and prior to March 21st, when the warrant closes. So whenever that meeting is, we're suggesting next Monday night, but I need to know that, we'll have a quorum. But by that time, we will come back with the list. In the meantime, Bonnie has a placeholder in the capital plan with that $453,000 to fund the projects as identified by this process.
One thing we're finding too is, there are maintenance issues that are listed on there. They listed everything on the report, so these guys, the experts in the PMBC are kind of walking us through the whole process as to, hey, you know what? Painting this room is not a facility structure issue.
Well, it depends. If you're repainting it a different color, that could be a replacement. It could be considered a replacement and not a...
I stand corrected in our last meeting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, sure, go ahead, Alex.
So you talked about, you're just doing the 7 buildings.
Yes.
Do you think that, based on what's left, that we have anything out there that's going to surprise us? And as far as facilities needs that are, is something looming there that we need to be worried about, or is the potential for something?
Well, I think what came out of our meeting on Saturday was, even though we've categorized all these projects, and number 1 being life safety, and one of those items is the fire alarm, panel in Houghton. We went into the study itself and recognized that the fire alarm panel was identified as in good condition. So even though it's in the top category, we might defer that because it's not an urgent activity. One of the things that is down in the last category, under grounds and building site, are the bleachers, and they're probably something that really needs to have some attention.
All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on this. I mean, the report was only completed a month or 2 ago, right? And you've already taken it and started working on it. And I think your charge was very short, not that long ago, so it sounds like you're making some progress and pulling Saturdays and things, so I appreciate that. I just think it's, the whole working group is doing some good work.
Steve and Bill they volunteered to say, we need to get a list and prioritize and categorize this list, and they did it on their own, so.
Right, they're the working and the rest of us.
Exactly. We're the group, they're the workers apparently, because they really took it to heart, so I appreciate that too.
Ready? Motion?
Sure.
All right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote.
Oh, wait a minute. For the March 17th, I'm not here March 17th. So I don't know if we want to look at other dates, sorry. I mean, I'm not saying you cannot continue without me though, either. By no means am I saying
We have a
that.
meeting scheduled on the 17th?
You don't yet.
No. This is a special meeting to deal with this, because the warrant closes on the 21st.
We'll have this and a number of other warrant closing type issues.
Do we know what those are yet at this time? Anything that's, I mean, I'd say get it to the 17th too.
Yeah, all of that stuff, we're aiming for the 17th.
That is, it's fine by me. If we're gonna have a quorum, I have no problems.
You guys got any issues with it?
We have 3 for next Monday night.
I know it's a
We got 3
big night for
next
Joe's.
Monday night?
St. Patrick's Day.
Joe?
Probably celebrating the 70s.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You
No.
personally involved in the?
No. I would love to be, I find this stuff fascinating, interesting, and I think, well, I
You
think
can always
it's,
come to our meeting,
Yeah.
our working group meeting on Wednesday.
I don't know if it's that fascinating. I think it's in good hands. I think, go ahead and set.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to include on the agenda for the special town meeting on Monday, March 17, 2014, to complete action on the recommendations of the Facilities Assessment Prioritization Working Group.
Special meeting, not special town meeting.
What'd I say?
Yeah, it's just a special town meeting. That's all.
Special meeting.
So make sure, I just want to make sure Jen,
Yeah,
yeah.
special meeting.
Motion been made and seconded to hold a special meeting on Monday, March 17th for the Board of Selectmen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
See you Wednesday night. Thank you.
So now we're on to some financial things. Let's go to, since Bonnie's in the conversation, we'll go to Standard & Poor's. Our previous bond rating was AA. We jumped from AA, right over AA plus, to AAA, which is the highest bond rating that we could ever get from Standard & Poor's. And that means we will be able to get the lowest bond ratings of any, lowest bond ratings possible, I believe. Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong. Bond rates. What did I say?
Right.
Bond rating?
Bond
Bond
ratings,
rates.
yep.
All right. And the budget updates, Bonnie had already said that our gaps were increasing.
But I'm not going to let you deal with the AAA rating.
Oh, that quickly?
Without saying a few more things.
Okay.
Just because it is probably one of the most significant
Okay.
achievements that we'll likely see. And I have to say that from the standpoint of the staff, when we were able to achieve a AA rating a couple of years ago, we sort of looked at ourselves and thought, gee, what would we need to do to get to AAA, which is 2 notches up, because there's AA, AA plus, and then AAA. And I have to see that we were not sure that we could plot a course that would get us to AAA. But we have nevertheless kept on that course. There's been diligent work that's been done within the organization through our finance team. It has definitely been the result of the leadership, both of this Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, in adopting written policies which mean a lot to the bond rating agencies. What means even more than having a written standard is adhering to the written standard, so it sets the bar high. And I think what it also reflects, though, and I was pleased to see in the narrative report, which is available at the town's website, is that it recognized that the economic factors that we're dealing with, not only in the town but in the region, are all coming into play as well. It's a very strong economy. It's very strong budgetary flexibility, strong budgetary performance, very strong liquidity, and Standard & Poor's views the town's management conditions as very strong, with strong financial practices. And that's about as good a report card as a community can get. And I think it's something that all of us should be extremely proud of, that achievement. And it's a lot of work to get there, and it's going to be just as much work to stay there. But it's a great moment, and great job by the team.
All right, I'd like to. So I apologize, I think that was a great summary. I apologize for looking at the clock instead of the significance of that, so thank you for the
Thank you.
update.
Thanks.
And,
I could just say something.
yes,
quickly.
to get you from my friend, yeah.
To thank the Finance Committee, too. This is a culmination of the policies that really the Finance Committee spearheaded back in 2007 and 2008 to bring to the Board of Selectmen for adoption by both boards. And we've been adhering to those policies and monitoring them and modifying them if needed. But we've been sticking to them every year, and they hold me to it, and your board does too. And it's, it's working. So I just wanted to thank them.
All right. And just
Faulkner, yeah.
one comment. Keith went through all the carrots and the plum, but there is one stick in there.
Yes, there is.
And I think that it's worth at least mentioning, maybe Keith could follow up on that, because it really does challenge the town to stay the course, or they will be very quick to pull the rating back. So it just, if Keith would just maybe talk to that a little bit. I just, I think a lot of work's gone into it. I think we just need to stay the course.
It's the fine print here that, however, if Littleton fails to maintain its very strong budgetary flexibility and liquidity due to deteriorated budgetary performance following large pension and OPEB contributions, we may consider a negative rating. And I would call on either Bonnie or Steve to translate for us. But it in essence means we need to keep on doing what we're doing.
You can only go down from here.
Thanks. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Steve? You'd have your hand up if you were, but you just seem to be a lot, one of the big architects on this one. So. Yes, sir?
If you look back, most of us were here when we were looking at a pretty gloomy outlook, and other towns were looking at a very gloomy outlook and a horrible economy, and we started making decisions about doing things, and we started working together. And we brought in the professionals we needed to get that done, and while other towns struggled, we began to rise. And it's been slow and steady and sure, and we've gotten to the top, and that's a product of very hard work, and that we are in a very exclusive club being there.
Selectman Knox?
No, nothing. I think, it's the process that has started 5-6 years ago, bringing the policies forward, the way we handle our debt exclusions, the way we handle our capital equipment expense, the way that, as debt rolls off, it either goes back for payment of debt or one-time purchases is huge, and that's what's really built the foundation to take us where it is. So, nice job by the finance team.
Okay. If there's nothing further, we can move back to 8A, budget update.
So I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of where we are and the buckets that we're still monitoring at this point in the budget. We haven't received a lot of new information, but we have received some new information in the last few weeks. So I'll give you the highlights and just some information that will lead to tweak going forward before we close the gap in the budget. So the draft budget includes a school department appropriation of $16,681,000, which differs from the school department request of $16,950,000. The reason that I have that in there, and again, it's just the working draft that's in process now, is because on the DESE website, there is, it was identified that there are $769,000 in circuit breaker funding that will be received this year. And the way that the town of Littleton and the school department with the finance committee has always handled those monies is monies received in one year are received and then spent in the following. It's good budgetary practice. If there are cuts, mid-year, you're not dealing with a scrambling trying to close a gap that, happened when you're 3 months left to finish your expenses in the budget cycle. So we get it in one year, we spend it in the following. DESE also requires that circuit breaker money must be spent by the end of the following year. And I would say that we're in a better position than some communities because they spend it in the current year. So we're planning, we're seeing what we have, and then we're planning to spend it in the next year. So again, for fiscal 14 that we're in now, we're going to receive $769,000. That needs to be spent by the end of next year. So In the school department's budget presentation, they had identified that $500,000 in reserves would be used for their budget request. So if you took the $17,450,000, which was identified as their budget, and subtracted the $500,000, that's where you got the $16,950,000 appropriation from town meeting. So I'm taking the same $17,450,000 budget and subtracting the required spending on circuit breaker funds of the $769 to get to the $16,681. So that just clarifies where I got that number.
Okay.
So again, it wouldn't reduce the level of spending, it just is changing the buckets that it would be allocated from. And even with that, I still have a $279,000 deficit.
Overall, or
Overall.
between you and school?
No.
Not between the school appropriation
Between
and...
the town budget.
Overall?
Overall,
All right.
I have $279,000 deficit.
All right, let's talk about how you're going to close that now.
Okay, so what are we watching? We are looking at...
So these are the items that kind of Chris asked about earlier.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have almost a $300,000 deficit now. What's still coming in? Local receipts, revenues, and state aid. We haven't received any information at all from the state as far as the level of state aid, other than the governor's budget, which was bleak. It was pretty much level funded. We had received some indication that the legislature might fund it a little bit higher, but again, I haven't received any information as of yet. So we're holding with a level funded state aid figure for both town and school state aid. I would caution that even if the state aid, the Chapter 70 aid, and the general municipal aid comes in level, the assessments could increase, which would effectively reduce our state aid. So we have to really monitor these. The other thing that we're looking at is health insurance premiums and enrollment. We are fortunate in that we just received some information that our health insurance premiums for active employees is only going up, I say only, but 5.5%. That's a pretty good rate increase compared to some other communities that are in double-digit increases, and it's based on our experience. So we have a relatively healthy base of employees here. We have not received the increase for the retiree rates yet. We won't receive those till later in the year. So there's the combination of how we build the health insurance budget. I projected a 14% increase in health insurance, which was a combination of the rate increase plus migration, additional people, additional retirees, additional changes from 19-hour-a-week employees to 20-hour-a-week employees in some departments. So I think in going through the numbers just quickly tonight, we might have about $100,000 that is available from the health insurance budget, and I'm going to need to firm those up with the retiree rates. But that could go to offset the $279,000 deficit. It's not going to close it, but it's going to help bring us, to a little bit more of a balanced situation. So again, open enrollment is in April. We'll have a better sense of what the demographics of our makeup will be, how many family plans, how many single plans, and from those numbers up. But I think right now maybe $100,000 we have in additional money that we could reduce the appropriation by. Local receipts, which would include new growth. We're monitoring that pretty closely with the development out on 119 and the other projects that we have in the pipeline with the building inspector and the permits being issued. I have $600,000 estimated there. It's a little aggressive, but I'm hoping that we can hit it. We'll know a little bit more in the next 3 weeks whether we're going to hit that target. The other part about local receipts is excise. We were pretty much on target last year for excise. We were about $50,000 higher than we had projected. But it's not a number I'm very comfortable pushing until I get the full March collections in and I can see where we're at for the quarter. So right now I'm keeping that level. And the other item that we're monitoring is collective bargaining as we kind of continue through this process. The town departments are all settled for fiscal 15. We need to see where the school department collective bargaining agreements come in at so that we can make sure that we have everything covered. And make sure that we're actually costing out the future costs of any maybe items that are considered non-financial but have a financial impact, such as sick leave or vacation time or anything like that. So again, with that, I'm still working at $300,000 deficit. It could be more. I'm hoping that the state will come out with some information that will help solidify that, but I would remind the board that we did go to town meeting last year with an unbalanced budget. We had to go back in the fall to true it up. But there's a lot of things being monitored.
Yeah, but truing it up is not bad when it's a small
Right.
deficit, but if we have to true it up in,
Right.
if we have to close a
If we have to-
$200,000 deficit in
Halfway through the year,
October,
it's,
yeah.
Or even,
That's tough.
it's not easy.
All right, so what I'm hearing is this is a little bit more grim than the last few years.
It is. And again, it's, level funded state aid looks like a reality at this point.
Yeah.
Last year, we had received some indication that we might get a little bit more, we're not, I'm not getting that right now.
Yeah, but then assessments come into play, like you said. So is there anything we need to be taking? I don't want to ask FinCom anybody this. Is there anything we should be taking, any action we should be taking to reduce the budget now?
I think, we're gonna need to start identifying things that could be reduced if we needed to, unless we get some information from the state very quickly.
And there's no time frame for getting anything from the state?
Oh, no, they can.
Whatever
I've
they want.
had-
Like you
I've
said,
had
to get
state aid
anything
figures.
after June 30th last year, right?
I've had them in November in
Yeah.
some budgetary cycles.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Just in reply to your question, Mr. Chairman, followed by the Chairman of the Finance Committee, is there anything we can be doing? I know it's the difficult part of the job and it deserves due consideration, but it's making decisions. And personally, I'm not sure I speak on behalf of the Finance Committee at this point, there's a couple of ways of going about it, across the board or prioritization. And I know you folks have spent some time giving consideration to some of the extraordinary requests, whether it be Council on Aging, whether it be what the school department is looking for. I mean, they're going through a period now where they're settling a contract. I mean, that's obviously something that needs to be considered, or the Park and Rec's request. Personally, I'm all in favor of making tough decisions, and if you folks make those decisions and you decide to disproportionately fund some programs rather than others, I back you on that. But the other approach is applying it across the board. It's a little, it's theoretically even-handed, but I'm not sure that represents the town's best interest. Fred may well have a different opinion.
No, I'm with Paul on this. I think if it's up to the management of the town to make the tough decisions. And if Bonnie comes up with extra money, the state comes up with extra money, there's nothing says you can't go back in the fall and do some of the things that you cut going into the May town meeting. But the reality is the reality. I mean, that her numbers are pretty tight at this point. And if we get lucky and we get state aid coming up, then, okay, you have a few more bucks to spend. But I think, putting everything on the table and making the, cuts as best we can is the way to go.
Why don't we get an agenda item? I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't see you, I started before you. You want to go ahead? Go ahead, yeah.
It may take a minute or two.
Okay, all right, go ahead. So I'm going to change my statement.
And as we look at the imperative to spend the entire special education reserve fund down, the school committee disagrees with the assessment by the finance folks. Specifically, when we look at Quartermaster's Regulation 60310, and we take it on down to many subparagraphs. Bottom line is we may carry those forward 1 year. So the imperative that must all be spent in the current year is not necessarily correct.
Well, if you're receiving the funding in 14, then you can carry that 14 receipt into 15, but it has to be spent by the end of 15.
Okay.
I kind of did wait for everybody else to finish before I said anything. So, thank you.
All right, but, so is, Fred, you're saying they are
Yes, I'm
kind of saying
done.
the same
He
thing?
wasn't done.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry. I thought when you sat back, I thought you were signifying you were done.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
As we explained to you, Book, in the joint meeting with FinCom and Board of Selectmen meeting, our intent to keep that reserve and the reasons for keeping the reserve. You may recall when Alex mentioned, not directly, but fiscal year 13 as we were going into it, and the problems we were looking at that. And the school committee was looking at using just about all the reserve. In fact, very much vilified for even thinking that. I can only use kind words this evening as to what some people thought of the school committee's decision that year. I stand by it, was the correct decision that year. And we're walking down the same road this year, that's the correct decision. and that is that we should maintain some reserve. When Dr. Detweiler briefed you this evening on some of the problems that we face in the special education, challenges, opportunities, whatever word you may want to use, you see that we have those opportunities where we have to spend money. Bonnie did correctly state that we are still in contract negotiations. We don't have a final answer there. If we do use the entire reserve, you're baking that into the following year's budget. So come FY16, it's already baked in, and it would have to be used because you're using it this year. That, and we also briefed you at that joint meeting that the state caused the CASE Collaborative, which is the Concord Area Special Education Collaborative, to refigure how it does its billing to the districts. The way it used to be was they would take last year's, let us know this year, and then we would pay it in the following year. So we knew exactly what to budget for. The state is disallowing that procedure, and it must be done in the current year. So going into 15. As I stated in my letter to you also, that it was good that the CASE Collaborative itself maintained a reserve, because what they're able to do, to hold us harmless is almost the wrong term, but what it enables us to do is not have to pay last year's bill in FY15, and FY15's bill in FY15. So that was fortunate for us, because that reserve exists. That's the reason we'd like to be able to keep that reserve, and we think it's prudent to do so, as I had stated at that meeting and the letter to you all.
Okay. Over and out.
And simply that the conclusion that we would draw from that, though, is that if the school committee follows through in that course of action that's been outlined, then the operating deficit that we're facing for our financial planning purposes is the $596,000, which I would also hear that the school committee would say should all come out of the town side.
I'm not saying they should come out of the town side, Keith. And actually, I take some umbrage, first off, to describe it that way, but you're actually in line with some other folks that said earlier this evening, as far as the characterization. If this happens, this creates the budget. So when the school department spends money, then it causes the town deficit to grow. And we could say any department spending any of its money causes the deficit to grow or to use the revenues that are available. I'd ask, and I've asked you all before, and even at that joint meeting, let's not characterize every change in the school budget as a change to the deficit or any kind of surplus that may exist in the town. Because that applies equally to every single department. If you spend something less, you change it. And if you spend something more, you change it also. So can I ask?
Yeah.
You know, ladies and gentlemen's agreement is that we can discontinue characterizing any school spending as the cause, any deficit that may occur in the town's budget.
So how do you want it characterized?
And that's fine. And I don't mean to impugn the motives or what the school committee's doing, because I think you're absolutely doing what's in the best interest of the schools and the town. I'm simply asking that if, through whatever calculation, we readjust how much we're out of balance at $569,000, it would be appreciated to have a cue from the school department whether any of that might come from the schools or whether, in order to balance, it's all going to come from the town. That's all.
In other words, where is it going to come across the entire town?
Would it be
the entire town?
If we did an across-the-board, if we did across-the-board cuts to meet that, would the school committee be a part of that effort?
Just as in FY13, we worked with everybody to come to a budget that was able to balance out, and we'll continue to do that. I think in the 8 years that I've been on the committee, the school committee have not worked with the town and whole to come up with a balanced budget.
We're all in the same boat, so, I mean, as long as we can through going into it.
Yeah, that's fine, that's great. Then we'll
No, but there are
go
departments
arm
that,
in
because
arm.
of a given year and certain circumstances, have particular needs outside of the norm, and this year with the budget negotiation and the interpretation of state law, the schools are, a little bit of a fix that's not of their own creating. So I just, I assume that they will be cooperative, as they have been, and I think it's only fair that we're equally understanding the position there.
Right. We're all in this together, and we'll look for the solution that together. So.
Alex, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I want to go back to the circuit breaker money and the requirement that the two of you disagree on, whether the money has to be spent. If that money is not spent, what happens with that money at that point? It stays in reserve?
I've asked my auditor to write up what would happen if those funds were not expended. That it would appear that on the surface, the circuit breaker funds are a reimbursement for expenses that were incurred in the previous year. And as such, DESE has come out with this ruling with the Department of Revenue's reference, in addition, that they must be spent by the end of the following fiscal year. And it shouldn't be used as a rolling building reserve. The school choice funds can be used like that. They don't have a timeline on, you must expend them in the following year. So that will continue to be able to be built up. And I think at the end of last fiscal year, there was $500,000 in school choice funds that was the ending balance of June. So there will still be some reserve monies, but I've asked my auditor, he's already referenced it in the audit last year, that the circuit breaker funds need to be expended in the following fiscal year. He's provided me with the references at the DESE website and the Department of Revenue website, but I've asked him to do an actual ruling on.
So in the event that we, in the end, decide that we're going to go along with what the school committee is recommending, which leaves some of that money unspent, who has access to that money at that point? If it's determined that it must be spent, and we've agreed upon a budget, and so we have this piece of money here, what is the process for then using that money? Who has access to it? How is it going to work?
The school committee has exclusive access to that can be spent without further appropriation by the school committee. So, and again, even if the school committee said, we're going to spend $769,000 of it, and there's more available, they could spend that. They don't need to come back and ask for additional votes or support.
So what you're saying is that if they were going through the fiscal year and they had this money, they can just access it? Doesn't that change the overall budget picture?
It changes the actual spending versus the budgeted spending. So, in prior fiscal years, if the stated use of reserves was $500,000, there might have been $800,000 expended. Now, there might have been, additional costs beyond when the budget was set that required the use of that $800,000 instead of $500,000. Maybe additional special ed costs came in. But they were spent without further appropriation, and instead of a, $17 million budget, it was 17.5.
But to be clear, because I'm not clear here, that means that if we appropriate X number of dollars in the budget, and this money is left in reserve, then in effect, they could tap into that money at any point.
Yes.
And that changes not the bottom line, the top line budget.
The actual spending.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Over to me, huh? All right. I think, as I said, it's a grimmer picture, and it's time to start making contingency plans, and I'm hearing that supported by FinCom. So I think at our next meeting, if the board agrees, we should probably we should have a hearing, we can get a quick update and, making contingency plans, whether it's prioritizing or talking about how we're going to make
Not the 17th, but the one.
The 24th. Right, the 24th.
Yeah.
You're going to leave it, you're going to leave it.
I'd love
Whatever
to,
the
I'd
three
love
of you
to.
come up with will be fine.
Not
There
that
won't-
easy.
There won't be any tie votes.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Yeah. So I think, does everybody agree that it might be time to start putting some, because that only gives us
absolutely.
2 more meetings before town meeting after that,
Yeah,
right?
because it'll be within a week or two after that we're publishing the budget in the booklet that gets mailed out to the voters.
What's the publication date? I don't have it in here, because we're meeting on the,
24th.
The publication date goes to the printer, I think, the 8th of April.
so we do that on the 24th. Can we try to put it early, too? I have no problem bumping other people. I think it's something we need to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for.
Sure.
Yeah, I suppose. Does anyone agree with, does anyone have a problem with putting it early and maybe bumping some of the stuff that usually comes earlier? All right.
So on Monday, March 24th, we'll discuss budget balancing strategies for
There you go.
fiscal 2015.
There you go. It's a nice way of putting it. And that has to be
We
decided,
try to be nice about that. so.
you said April, so when does the
Will
budget
be
have to be finalized?
It'll be the hit list. Well, within a week after that, so.
Okay, all right,
We'll have as close as we get, I think, by the next meeting, by the next regular meeting.
okay.
We'll know what the school department number is for sure, because it'll get adopted this
Okay.
Thursday.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's see. You want to go into, so next item is fire station.
What hits
What is it?
staffing reviews on those?
You want to do staffing reviews, get those quick? All right, I am going to call a 2-minute recess. I just need to hit the measure, excuse me. Excuse me, folks. Everybody.
Get a soda.
Is he gonna change the order? Yeah, or maybe get some of the staff stuff to get through. Because we got folks here. Everybody from library, fire, police.
We are having number 10.
And highway, Jimmy's still here too.
We are doing this one.
We got library, highway, police.
Hey, Bonnie, where did the Council on Aging,
You push that button, you can hear.
where did the Council on Aging,
Gonna hold it down.
the kitchen? No. Is it somewhere and it's gonna be at the top? Okay, I was just wondering, because I didn't see it.
I made sure that they.
We know what's there.
Yeah, I made a comment to you all earlier in the previous meeting. Tied to the fire station.
I'll give you $10. All right, get Moniz up there, I'll give him 5.
I couldn't hear what you said. Paul, I really have a lot of trouble hearing. No, it's just, I've got a hearing problem, it's never gonna, we're gonna have to get to the point where we can actually.
Yeah, and that's what I
You play softball this year? Now you don't have to umpire.
Oh, have you? Did you note that down?
Good. How much they offering you? What's your best offer? We play. Okay, yeah, we're hurting. I don't know, we gotta get some more players. Let's go. All right, let's go. All right. I'd like to call the meeting back to order here, please. Thank you very much for that break. Did the board wish to change the, does anybody want to go into the staffing vacancy really quickly? I think we can dispense with those, or do we want to go into fire station? Hearing no preference, I'll take staffing vacancies. Let's try to get those knocked out real quick. Bonnie, are these, can we do these very quickly as far as they are all no increases, no, they're budget neutral, there you go, that's a good word for it, and everything's within,
Yes, on the highway department, they're temporary staff.
Okay.
Their benefits, no, they're just temporary, seasonal. To fill some summer need and extended illness absence.
okay.
Library, it's, the library actually did a great job in requesting this in a reduced number of hours in order to accommodate the transfer promotion of an existing employee.
Okay.
This keeps the number of benefit eligible positions the same, so there's no increase in benefit eligible positions.
Okay.
The police dispatch, we need to keep the the communication staff at 5 full-time employees just to cover the shifts. So as one leaves, we have to bring one on. It's budgeted as a full-time employee. We need to replace it in order to cover the 911 desk. If you don't, you'll incur overtime costs.
Okay.
So,
Anything to add from the departments? Jimmy? Anything? No. Library?
Other than I will be back and probably again in about a month.
Okay.
One more.
Okay. And police dispatch? Anything to add?
I would like to dispense with two of these and make comment on the police dispatch one.
Go ahead, you go with the motions you want to dispense and...
All right,
Oh, you got it? Okay.
real quick.
Well, I'm assuming that
Okay.
Jim will want to do a combined motion.
Oh,
Sure.
And if you do, I would like to separate out the police dispatch.
Okay. You ready?
yes.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to amend its vote on February 10, 2014, grant the library director's revised request understaffing vacancy review policy to promote a benefit-eligible 20-hour per week library technician to senior library technician position at the same hours and benefits, and to replace the vacant benefit-eligible 20-hour per week library technician with a 19-hour per week non-benefited eligible position.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. All right, on the highway, move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the highway operations manager's request under the staffing vacancy review policy to hire one seasonal highway truck driver / equipment operator and one temporary truck driver / equipment operator.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, Alex, you have the floor.
I would just want to speak to this. I would like to see the department come in with a review of their hiring practices before the board, before they proceed here.
Why?
Oh, wait a minute, Deputy Chief. Well, let's discuss. So this is this request right now is you don't have, you're going to go advertise this.
Correct.
And you're going to, so you have nobody in mind. Do you have a position that you're filling with overtime right now? Is there the urgency to this?
We'll be filling 5-7 days of overtime. When he goes to the town of Groton. The reason he's leaving and going to the town of Groton, quite simply, is because the town of Groton pays $3 more an hour.
Okay.
Simple fact.
All right, so you're going to start paying, you said you're going to be in 7 days, you're going to start paying overtime, and obviously overtime until you get the position filled. What's the schedule?
Well, once you approve, it goes out to advertising, and then it would, we advertise at least for 30 days typically, and then do the same process we normally do, which is do the, resume screen, then do the hiring process with the fire department and the police department, and screen the person through. Hopefully, we get some trained individuals in this time that show in the mix, and then, we bring them to you for final hire.
All right. So timeframe though, I mean?
Well, if you approve today, you figure we're looking at, early April, to close resumes. You're probably really not talking realistically till right around town meeting before we get through all the vetting process and everything else to get them in. So we're looking at May, so we're really looking at probably 2 months of overtime at least, and then depending on where they are in their process, you could be talking another 2 months of training.
Okay.
So you're really talking almost at the beginning of the fiscal year.
All right, so we have a month before we even start to have candidates to consider. Okay. And Alex has expressed a concern that he'd like to see what we have for review hiring practices. That's his request, and if the board wishes, we may have a month to do that, or if you want to put this off.
I understand the urgency of
Yeah.
trying to get this done. This is a critical position. But, so I think maybe the better way for me to make my point is that I think we as a board should sit down and talk about that policy, stem to stern, of the whole screening policy, the hiring practices policy. We've done it all across the town. And I don't know why we shouldn't take that opportunity here. But this, again, is a critical position, so I'm not sure we want to hold it up in this particular case.
All right. I would propose then to have an agenda item to discuss how we would move forward regards to reviewing and commenting on the police procedures. Would we
Yeah,
want?
that could be done after town meeting, because we got a tight schedule coming up, we got
And
town
it's not-
meeting
yeah.
coming up. I mean, the process has worked, they advertise, they interview, they go through, nothing has changed for their process. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to looking at it, but I
Yeah.
think, we got tight schedules coming up, we got town meeting coming, these agendas are getting huge, it's 9:15 and we still got the fire station to talk, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea, let's do it later on.
We have town council there too for.
Yeah, I know, yeah, executive session, yeah.
So for the purposes of tonight, let's,
Right.
why don't we drop it for now and go ahead and vote on this, but, can we bring up at some further point whether we want to discuss this?
Yeah, if you guys are talking after town meeting, then you guys, I don't know if you guys want to schedule it now, or if you want to just wait and, put it on Keith's radar to something that you want to talk about, or maybe make it a goal for next year.
Well, it is our goal.
goal this- it's a goal this year,
It's
too.
it's been a goal to look at all our policies,
We
which is
can,
not a
we
bad
can
thing.
schedule, and we've had to,
After town
we
meeting.
had to scuttle a lot of our policy discussions
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah.
So,
Move, you ready
Good?
for?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, session,
Ready for a
okay.
motion?
Yes, sir.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the police chief's request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill one full-time benefited dispatcher communications officer position.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you, Deputy.
thank you.
thank you, good night.
All right, thanks. So,
A real quick one here, too.
what's that? Let's get on to this. So, fire station financing, so as, obviously, the board knows what's going on here, that on January 6th, the Board of Selectmen gave some guidelines to the, some goals to how to fund the fire station. There's been a lot of discussions outside of meetings and inside of meetings, and obviously that's coming from residents and board members and staff. And the board is now, I guess, meeting its commitment to discuss this further. And I think before we go, I don't know how in depth we want to go tonight. It sounds like it's going to be a lengthy discussion. I don't know if we need to set some guidelines tonight and schedule a more formal, more time, or do we want to do we think we have it in us tonight to make a decision and talk about how we're going to do this?
I don't know, you have people here that waited an awful long time to talk about it. I know it's late, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't know if we could come to a decision tonight or not. So where we stand right now is the guidelines and recommendations were made to fund the fire station within the levy limits starting in 2016. The design funds would start to be available. And the thought behind that decision was that the Board of Selectmen hear very frequently that, taxes are going up and it's impacting seniors, and that we made this vote, 3-2, it's worth noting that it was 3-2 vote, that it was, the goal was to not raise taxes, and that's what we're hearing from people. Since then, we've had some seniors and some residents come to us and say they actually want to raise taxes by paying for it outside the levy limit. Right now, the recommendation is inside the levy limit, and Bonnie, I don't know if you want to weigh in here. I think there is, I hear from staff and I hear from FinCom that, there were times back after we did the high school within the levy limit, and everything after that was an override. I think, we were talking earlier, and I believe it's in your memo, I think there may be a way to kind of do both, and that would be to outside of the levy limit without raising taxes beyond what they are today. Where they are in 2012. And when I hear raising taxes, I think about, there's some reference point. I don't want to raise taxes higher than they are today. So the other thought that we hadn't considered is, I'll throw it out there, is that we can do something similar to what we had planned on doing within the levy limit, which is waiting till debt rolls off and using that extra room on the levy limit to pay for it, the fire station. What I was talking about today with Bonnie is that we could also do the same thing outside the levy limit, wait till some debt rolls off that's outside the levy limit and pay for it. So what would happen in that case, we'd start using our 2012 as a baseline, and the goal is to not raise the taxes above 2012 level. The taxes would come down slowly every year because that's the way we pay our debt. And then in 2016, the same time frame? Same time frame, there's enough debt outside that we could start the financing, start the process, and our taxes would not go above the 2012 level.
Excluded debt portion of the tax rate.
Right, okay.
So your taxes would go up.
They go down,
They go
they're gonna
up.
trickle down, but they'll trickle down between now and 16, but then they'll go up into, back up to 2012 levels in 2016, or 2020.
2012 was the year, fiscal 2012 was the year that the police station, the Russell Street School debt, and the middle school debt fully came onto the levy. And it's all excluded debt. So 2012 was really a heavy impact year for excluded debt on the tax rate. That being said, since 2007, when we adopted the first version of the financial policies, large projects like this were targeted as being done as debt exclusions, and we've consistently done them as debt exclusions since then. This is the
exception of the fair.
It was
No, that was
voted as a debt
exclusion.
exclusion. It was voted as a debt exclusion. What we've done is, like the track, and the track is a great example. The track was voted as a debt exclusion. It was a larger project. But we identified some funding sources within the levy limit from debt that was rolling off and from snow and ice funds that were not expended. And we said this is a good project to allocate those funds to. So although it was voted as a debt exclusion, it never got applied to the levy or to the taxpayers as a debt exclusion. It was absorbed within the operating budget. So that was a great thing. We can still do that. This does not preclude the board from identifying funding sources annually. We can look at the debt service payment and say, okay, if it's $600,000, maybe we can take $100,000 of that off and not raise it, if that type of funding appeared or became available. But it would not compromise the capital plan buildup that we've been programming since the last 5 years. Capital planning was not built into the operating budget in 2007 and 2008. Through debt service reductions, we've been able to earmark almost $550,000 of reduced debt in the levy limit that now gets spent on capital, along with a portion of an undesignated fund balance. And that reduced debt figure grows every year by about $80,000. So it was a way to build up the capital plan. We have about $3 million in requests this year, no, $4 million in requests this year in identified capital requests. I realize that not all $4 million, may be a priority for the boards, but we have definitely more requests than we have in resources for it. We have about $1.3 million to spend. So building that up by that small $80,000 incremental amount every year is important to try and address some of the infrastructure needs and maintain the buildings. If the fire station is funded inside the levy limit, it's going to consume about $600,000 worth of payment annually. So we would go from being able to spend about $1.8 million in 2020 on capital improvements to $1.2 million, which is the level that we're at now, approximately. So yes, we'd be able to still spend some more money on capital, and then we'd have to rank it back up to today's level. The finance department and with the financial policies would like to be consistent in building up that capital plan. I would just encourage the board to really look at this to see if I don't want to say sacrificing the capital plan, but it really is. It's sacrificing the future plan of the capital to finance the fire station inside the levy. Having it as an exclusion vote, as that debt is paid down, it goes away. It's not a permanent override. It's just to pay the debt service for that particular project. And again, if there were extra snow and ice money available in any given year, you could apply it and reduce the amount that's placed on the tax bills.
So you made the case, for bringing it outside the levy limit, totally. And, what we talked about today was to bring it outside the levy limit later so that we can maintain that tax. But the tax would come down and then go back to 2012.
At that, we would keep the same timeline, yes.
And that is just another option that hasn't been considered, but it's something that I want to put out for another option. Let's go with, I'm going to keep with the board first, so go ahead.
So at our previous meeting, you said that the 1.375 we're spending on capital would stay consistent throughout. So the 1.375 we spend on the capital is not going to change moving forward, no matter what we're going to do.
It could change. I mean, a portion of that, $800,000 of that, is reliant on undesignated fund balance. If the budget is squeezed and reduced, then I'm not going to generate the 800,000 in undesignated. But
That's an operational budget squeeze. But any debt coming off service right now, you can only use it to pay down debt or pay for capital. So that's it. It can't go into operational. So when you say squeeze, it kind of confused me into, what are you talking about? In regards to new projects coming online?
I'm talking
or-
about the demand for capital versus
Right.
the resources.
So the 4 million that we see today, and I don't think, since I've been here 6 years, we've ever been able to fund the full capital request, and that's why we're here, to make those decisions. Someone said earlier today, decisions have to be made. That's what we're supposed to do, is make those decisions. So you said 1.2, it's 1.375, and that won't change, it will stay consistent throughout.
The $500,000 that's in there now from the rolled off debt will stay consistent. The 800,000 can change. If
It can go up?
it could go up or it could go down.
And it can go down, okay.
I'd just like to bring up another factor that wasn't available to us or we weren't aware of at the January 2nd, 6th meeting, whatever it was the facilities assessment and the demands of that, which are going to be capital items each year. So that's another factor.
$5 million a year
Yeah,
averaged over the-
yeah, but it's still, yeah.
And that number there is, in, dealing with, on that group, with that group, there's a lot of maintenance issues, and that's why I brought that up about the painting earlier. Sure, you say $1 million, that was a huge list. And, Steve Moore, who kind of spearheaded the discussion about that list, was very specific in regards to what's a capital item and what's a maintenance issue. And that's what we really need to work on with that group, is, because there's a lot on there that isn't capital.
Right.
It isn't. It's all purely inside operational maintenance stuff. And that's why we got to decipher what that is, so. I don't know about $1 million.
Right, but there are capital items that we didn't know until
Absolutely.
January. All right, I've been monopolizing, Joe.
Absolutely. I'm just listening.
All right, Alex?
Well, I understand what Bonnie says completely, and this is kind of a difficult thing to understand, which way is the better to go. But what I just heard you say is that we're going to face an unknown number of dollars that are going to put pressure on the budget within the debt levy limit that are maintenance items and do not qualify for capital items. And I do not want to see us take a vote that doesn't give us the financial flexibility we need to address those and address the fire station funding. That's one reason that I'm in favor of trying to find a way to do it with a debt exclusion and then work diligently to pay for, not have to actually pay for it all through the debt exclusion. The other issue is the participation of the voters. Big projects like this ought to go before the town, with all respect for who we are as the town planners and the town leaders. There's certain things and certain projects that the voters just have to tell us how they feel. And I think a fire station, police station, school, and items like that should be in the hands of the voters primarily. I mean, we can work on it, we can say it's important and all that stuff, but this is big money. So I think this belongs in the hands of the vote that a debt exclusion will bring. And finally, I think, it is my personal opinion, that if we do it within the debt exclusion, we're not saving the voter any tax money. The tax money we spend is going to be the tax money we spend. And this is not a plan, doing it within the debt exclusion, to save the taxpayer money or say that we're not increasing taxes. We have more requests than we have ability to fund. And this is just another example of that. There's no way we get to all these things without increasing taxes. And whether we increase it in little capital projects, 100,000 at a time, or we put the fire station in front of the voter as one as one big project is really the choice here. But there isn't a tax saving option. What we really want is a plan to minimize the impact on taxpayers of each and every project we do. And the fire station is one of them. So I'm in favor of the debt exclusion with, as the chair said, with a serious commitment to finding a way to fund it in the same sort of manner as we did the track. Bigger project, but where we get the flavor of the town meeting, we proceed if we have to by what town meeting tells us, but if we're good managers of the money and we work our way through it, we can pay down some of that debt without tapping the taxpayers for it. And that gives us the best financial flexibility as we go forward.
Just a couple things.
Go ahead. Yep.
So I do agree with you engaging the people of town, and we always talk about engaging the folks in town to make decisions. So I believe at the last meeting, I think it was the Finance Committee, the joint meeting, I said possibly, why don't we have a non-binding question put on? Ask the folks 2 questions. Do they want a fire station? Right, makes sense, because no one's asked the public, right? And number 2, how would you like to fund that fire station? So, I think if we do that, that gives us a clear direction in regards to what the townspeople really want, and they speak through their votes. As far as your comment about not raising taxes, if we do it outside the levy, taxes will go up. One thing we need to remember, even with our 2.5% increase in taxes every single year, we go up 2.5%. That equates to residents in upwards of 5% on your tax bill. So when I talk about trying to limit those tax increases, we have a built-in tax increase we do every year, 2.5%. So, that equates to, it's been averaging right around 4.5% increasing in our tax.
It depends on the shift that's voted.
Yeah, but around 4.5 to 5% increase in our tax bills every year. So it's just something to think about, and you talk about engaging the public. I would like to see that, engage the public, let them see, A, do they want a new fire station, and B, how would you like to fund that?
You know what's coming, right? Because we talked about this today. You know what's coming. So you and I had a discussion on this today, and we talked about that, and it's a good way to gauge the public, and I think that, we're here for a reason. We have the data. We've been working with this for months, and to try to get every person in town who's going to vote on this to the level of understanding that we have, I think would be very difficult, and I think it's going to be a lot of, I think that just a regular, just a vote like that, people may not have the time to discuss every issue. And like I said, we're here for a reason.
That being said, then we already voted on this. Why are we, a decision's been made?
Well, I have new information. I think I've talked to a lot of people about this, people that I respect greatly and who I respect their knowledge in this. I think we also have new information as far as the facilities update. And frankly, I'll admit that even though after doing this for 2 years, I have a much better understanding of the whole budgeting, cap plan, and exclusion process. So I think, with the additional homework that I've done, I would be willing to put this under a debt exclusion, provided that we do it in a manner that taxes don't go above the 2012 level. So
you wouldn't consider what Jimmy just put forward? I think it was a pretty good idea, because we've heard it over and over, let the people speak on it. I can't see any harm in doing that.
Well, I just...
But the idea is a good idea. But if you separate the two, a debt exclusion puts both those questions in one question. Okay. But if you separate the two, do you want a fire station? Well, if I ask all these people, most of them are going to say yes. All right. How do you want to pay for it? Well, I don't really want to pay for it. I prefer not to pay for it. So it's kind of like these things will go opposite directions by nature. And if we put them together, we want a fire station, but it's going to cost you this amount of money to do it, then it ties it together, and I think that's when the voter gets to really put some thought into it and make it a choice.
And I think a vote, I mean, like I said, gauging people is good. We have, we've heard from people. I think if we can make it, put it on there, if it's on there as a debt exclusion, it is a vote, and if we can put as much information as we can out there. I just think we're here to do a job, and I just think that it's our decision to make and to educate the public as much as we can as far as, it's the same thing. Putting it on there as debt exclusion is the same thing. It's a vote. It's just a binding vote.
I don't think
And-
anybody here has said we don't need
Yeah.
I mean, the entire board has said, supported the fire department. The entire board has said that, the department needs a new station. It's a matter of recently these issues coming up in regards to how to pay for it. I mean, don't you think the folks should decide how to pay for it? And to your point, Alex, in regards to the total amount, we know that it's gonna be between 6 and 7 million. That's the number we're throwing around at this point. We can't tie that down yet to a specific number because the bid documents haven't gone out, but, folks know how much it's gonna cost.
I think just another thing to the way I've gone back the other way, the way I've reconsidered my position on this. I think also I've always said for the last several years, I said, we need to keep this cap plan going, and we need to find out where it's going to go, and being able to pay cash for large items, $1 million or, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, being able to pay for cash is very valuable. And, well, I think it would be, if we can increase that so that we can increase it to, a few million, I think we'd be in a better position, and that's just where I've.
But you're
that's where I've
contradicting
been.
yourself because you're saying, let's do it outside the levy, and any debt coming off, let's pay it towards the fire station. So
No,
you're
no, I
not
didn't say
gonna-
that. I didn't say
Well, you are by saying, I'd like to see the cap plan keep increasing. So the way you increase your cap is to use retired debt and put it towards the capital equipment.
Right, but not,
So-
yeah.
So originally, you had said that you'd say, let's do the borrowing outside the levy and use any debt coming off the rolls, pay towards the fire station. So you can't.
No, I didn't, no, I said anything that's, if any debt, any debt coming off outside the levy, go toward the fire station, outside the levy limit. That,
Okay.
not, but the inside the levy, any debt rolling off, I feel should be in the cap line. I've been saying for years, and I think I contradicted myself when I originally voted for this without giving it the full thought that I have now and the full understanding, that doing it inside the cap plan is not consistent with what I've said, and I think that's just another reason for me to bring it outside.
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest one thing?
Sure thing.
We might not make this decision tonight,
Oh.
but in fairness to the people that are out there, could we allow people to speak, try to limit it, because we do have an executive session, we still have, but I know people have been here since 7 o'clock that
Yeah.
wanted to, if they keep it brief, can we open it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't have anything to comment on, though, that's the thing. We're still in limbo here, we haven't decided what we're gonna do.
Oh, I know.
And we know where a lot of them stand, so if people want to discuss where they, give us some type of input, but I really, considering what Joe just said, if we can keep it from anything that we've already heard, I think is important. I mean, we've discussed pretty much everything that they've said, and if there's anything new, that'd be great. I think not having anything to really comment on, I'm not sure that what there's going to be to say. And that goes for everybody speaking, is that let's try to keep it to stuff that hasn't been said. So with that, Mr. Glavy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm speaking for myself, although I'm chairman of the Finance Committee. I do have a number of items to cover. I think this is an important subject, and it deserves that attention, and I won't try to repeat things that have been said before, although I'll try to clarify where I think some things have been made a little bit muddy. I must admit up front, I thought I understood things when I got the December 5th memo. That was pretty straightforward. The preference for doing it outside of the levy limit was under the assumption that that was the only way to fund it if we were going to do it immediately. That was never anybody's intention. The funding plan that was also presented by the finance team in that same memo on December 5th said, absolutely, you can do it under the levy limit if you put it in the cycle of the debt schedule where the high school and the Shaker Lane School are coming off the books. That S&P Standard & Poor report that we got, we were all proud about an hour or two ago, highlighted a number of things in financial policies, financial practices, and it's broad in its praise for the town. But I'll remind you that the vote that you took in December, and I could care less, it was 3-2, 5-0, whatever it was a vote of your board, was a vote to continue practice that the town has been doing for 15 years. Major projects, this building we're in right now, under the levy limit, scheduled, rolled off. The Shaker Lane additions and renovation, under the levy limit. High school, under the levy limit. Other projects, when we weren't able to accommodate them under the budget, such as the middle school, the police station, we did outside the levy limit. That's fine, we're flexible. And we're willing to support projects either way. But the voters have respected the town leaders for respecting them, and by keeping the town's budget reflective not only of operating expenses, but also of capital and debt, principal, and interest. And in fact, that plays an important function under the budget, and that's why it's spoken to in the financial policies. It's one of those items that does not have a growth factor associated with it. So in some measure, the hard work was done years ago, creating the space in the budget that allows you to pay for the fire station with space that's already there. It's not free. Alex, I heard you say earlier tonight, and I hope that you guys can find a way to do something unanimous. With the reduced group, that is something that I would appreciate. But I would take something you said and just kind of turn it back in the spirit of what you said, rather than putting an override out first and then getting rid of it if you don't need it. How about just the opposite? How about take the space that's available, becoming available, as was detailed by the finance department, and putting in the fire station there, scheduling that in there, and then if that becomes unworkable, we always have the chance to come back and revisit at an annual town meeting or a special town meeting to do an override. That's allowable in law, and in fact, it's no more different than doing it at the beginning of a project. Another point that I think gets muddied here that needs to be understood, and I know Mr. Selectman Carr, who served on the Financial Policy Subcommittee with me when we worked with the finance team last summer to revise the financial policies, knows this, that our policies, as adopted and as practiced, call for us to specifically use freed up debt capacity to do a certain number of things. One of those things is not supporting operating costs, and that's stated emphatically. So I think some folks, unstated, are operating under the assumption of, well, gee, the townspeople will support a fire station. Of course they will. We all will. So why not get them to vote an override for that, and that'll free up some money for some other operating expenses. We should make sure that everybody understands that's not the case. That's not how it works. So effectively, we've got a chance to continue with consistent pattern, one of the practices that's been in place for 15 years, during which time our bond rating has increased and we've received plaudits, and use that same approach for the fire station because we can, and we're able to, it's no impact on the capital plan either, any more than any other expenditure in the budget that's already there is an impact on the capital plan. I had sympathy for my brother, Chairman Avella, who is sitting there feeling some sensitivity to the school budget that they get singled out. I'll tell you, there's no reason the fire station should get singled out like this. It's an important project, and the most important projects are the ones that we should put under the levy limit if you have the opportunity, and we do. That's what was before you on December 5th, and I believe that you were correct in making that decision, and I can't keep track of how the arguments and the ideas have changed like a bouncing ball ever since then. So you have a tough job to do, but those are my 2 cents worth.
Mr. Coughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been thinking long and hard about this, and we need to learn from the mistakes of others in other towns. Groton has just gone through this. They were inside the levy, but they just have a vote that it's both inside the levy and outside the levy right now. And we made the same mistake in 2003. It was inside the levy when the high school came online. And it was disastrous for the department, the rest of the departments in town, because there was no money available. So when will the 2,000 to 3,000 voters to vote whether they even want a new fire station? One way to prevent this is if your taxes are increasing, is to vote no on an optional no on monetary articles on the warrant. I mean, to me, it's common sense to go a debt exclusion. And for what I'm hearing from the board tonight, taking it under advisement, there's no set plan. The set plan, when you gentlemen voted for 3-2, I mean, that was a set plan. And I guess my question is, tonight, from what I'm hearing, is that still valid, or are we reconsidering that?
It's valid until we change. Sorry, it's a tough comment, but yeah, it's still there until we have another vote, and we're discussing whether or not we want to have another vote or amend the procedure or change it. I think yeah, we haven't rescinded any votes, so as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, it's still a valid vote. But we're considering, I don't think we need to, I think we'll make one vote to rescind and then change it if we decide to change it,
But
so.
here's my problem. We have three gentlemen that are voting for inside the levy. If we go to town meeting, we get maybe 200 people. And if we go to the vote on election day, I think it's a week after we vote again, and we probably have 2,000 to 3,000 regular voters. And I think those are the folks that really should be deciding whether we even want a new fire station.
I see your point, but everybody has an opportunity to come out at any time. So we'll, you know, I think if it gets to the residents as, you know, either way, I mean, there's going to have to be a get out the vote or get out the town meeting. But, yeah, well, Keith, wait a minute, there's no ballot vote on, is there a ballot vote on debt exclusion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
Oh, okay.
There is. In
All right,
fact,
yeah,
for
so we have
the,
both,
for the
yeah.
police station, it was on a presidential ballot in
Yeah,
November.
okay. So it goes both, yeah. So I think,
Largest possible.
does that clear up does that meet your need? Because you said you wanted to go to the ballot, so it does.
Yeah, if you folks, if it's outside the levy.
Right, I see what you're saying. Okay, all right. Mr. Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am encouraged by what I've heard you all say here tonight. I watched the January 6th meeting 30 times, no exaggeration, never suffering, it was painful.
You've got time on your hands.
And you got long time. You guys, someday you will be tired. You guys were in crisis, actually, debating that. I'm not going to quote you, but I watched, and you were all, I don't think people were listening, and some of the expressions you made tonight, I saw it happening then, when you say, you know, I might have made a different decision back on the 6th, if you had thought about it differently, and I could see that. Now, tonight, we're having a very interesting discussion, because I think, A, that the voters need to be making this decision. We all support the fire station. I don't think anybody's against a fire station. But how it's paid for, and we need to really understand it. And I look at Groton. Groton's in the paper. They had a special town meeting coming up in the 1st of April to take $400,000 annually out of the debt exclusion, which is assigned to the fire station. That's how they got it started. They got it started. They don't have any more money. They don't have money. Now they're going to have to force a vote of the whole town to get money for the fire station. But, of course, they got no choice but to vote yes, because they already started it. You know, they started it on a debt exclusion. Town vote, 200 people voted, they got it started. Now the money's gone. So now, they say, now the town's got no choice. We got to vote whatever it's going to be. I think we should do that up front here in Littleton. It's very simple. We should just know the whole story, and we should go vote. But I'm really glad to hear that all of you people are opening your minds to this possibility. So thank you for that. Please.
Just a clarification here. I think, Henry, you meant that they started within the levy limit and they had to go to a debt exclusion.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
That's right.
All right, Mr. Simone.
Thank you. Chris Simone, 93 Whitcomb. So, look, it seems difficult to sit and listen to a conversation about capital, albeit it's a capital project, and exclude potential ramifications and unintended consequences on operational expenses and the ability to fund those. You can't. I mean, the reality is, at the end of the day, if we go down this path of trying to squeeze it under the levy, that we will potentially, like the high school or other projects, find ourselves squeezed for funds, for everything else we have to pay for. We are one town, one little town. We have to cover, it comes from someplace. It comes from us. And so to be forced into an unexpected operational override which permanently resets the tax rate, unlike an exclusion which simply helps us cover the financing during that period, would have much graver consequences on the tax rate for the people that we're trying to protect. I mean, that's one. I mean, ultimately, we have to avoid an override, which permanently affects the tax rate.
Operational override.
Operational override. Let me just finish.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure, no, because we are talking override.
Selectmen said, I guess in a large way agreeing with the conclusion you've reached, which is where we've been. Second, it is my understanding it's our policy, and we had a discussion tonight about the importance of policies and adhering to those now more than ever before to fund a project like this by way of debt exclusion. And the way to get there And what a debt exclusion includes and brings us down the path of, as Selectman McCurdy stated, is maximum voter participation, because we have to vote to achieve that. That's a good thing for us. More ayes, more decisions, and follow the policies which brought us to that AAA Standard & Poor's rating, and not depart from it because of whatever reason. The third point, and I have 4 points, I'm going to be quiet because it's late. I was at the meeting of the FinCom on the 4th of February, and it struck me that the chairman didn't allow that committee to vote. Why not? But why not? Why not have that committee vote? That committee was not in favor of departing from the sound fiscal policy, which has brought us to this positive state. Why not hear from that committee, and why not hear from this one? I think you've put some good work into this. There have been multiple meetings. You've discussed the issue, and do the people's business. I think you should vote tonight. Selectman Knox, I think you can vote tonight.
All right, that was 3, right? Did you have 4?
No, that was 4.
All right.
Can I just clarify,
wait.
since I was the chairman of that meeting and Mr. Simone has misstated what happened, it's on tape so people can watch it. No motion was made to take a vote. We had a discussion on it, and since the subject hadn't been fully vetted out, although the subject was raised about taking a vote, that was deferred. There's going to be a vote tomorrow night.
Simone, to the chair, please. Simone, to the chair, address the chair, or just the board, please, yeah.
Selectman Sent, through the chair. So just to clarify, that's good news, and I'll be quiet. So the FinCom is voting on this particular issue, it's specifically tomorrow evening?
I don't know, that's what he said. Would you like me to clarify what you're voting on?
I had a request to put it on the agenda for tomorrow night, and the request included the suggestion that there'll be a vote. So I'm not certain someone will make a motion.
Right, you can't make a motion as chair, so.
Right, so.
Yeah. Someone doesn't talk yet.
Thank you.
Mrs. Coughlin.
Kathy Coughlin, 16 Coughlin Road. I just don't know why we're not going along with or agreeing to what the financial team of the town has studied. The assessors, the treasurer, the, whatever Bonnie is. That knows the entire setup of the town. They plan out so many years what's going to happen. This is what she has said that would really work for the town. I think that's what we should vote for. That's what we hire them for. That's their job, and they know more than probably any of us that are trying to deal with this.
Steve?
I think Bonnie, when she was speaking before, summarized it pretty well, the whole situation. A couple of things that were said tonight. Yes, it's true, this building and Shaker Lane and the high school were all inside the levee. But after those projects were done, that's when the financial policies were put in place because of the financial situation we were in at the time. And the financial policies from that point forward, middle school, Russell Street, police station, track, all says major projects within the town should be funded through debt exclusions. That's our policy. That's what S&P has quoted. That's what's in there. We've lived by these policies. We've come a long way since the high school debt was put in place, the good and the bad, and we've worked our way through it to where we are today. It's not ideal. There's still funding issues, but we need to keep with what has worked until we can financially say that we're sound enough to release some of those issues in the policies. Secondly, Jimmy, you were talking about 1.3 million? What?
This year.
This year.
Yep.
So let's just,
375.
for an example, let's say that the fire station is going to be funded in this year's budget.
No, I'm not saying this year.
No, because you're saying that the 1.3 is here in next year, in the year after, is what you're saying. So it's never, what you said, it's never going away.
What I'm saying is the funding levy should stay the same. As Bonnie stated, that the 800, was it 800,000? 800 and something may go up, may come down, so.
So now we're funding the fire station inside the levy.
From the retired debt that's coming off.
Which is inside what Bonnie is funding right now. That is what makes up the 500,000 that she has inside the levy.
Future debt coming off the roll.
There's not much more coming off.
Yeah, there is. Coming up on 2016, that's the
Yes,
spreadsheet that she gave.
the high school, when that comes off, yes.
2016.
Fiscal 20. Yeah, by
Absolutely.
20 when we place it.
Absolutely, so we're
So,
not,
so
we're
so
not
there is
talking.
other funds coming off.
Can I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Debt service for the fire station is somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 per year. Has to come from someplace. Where?
As we've seen previously in the spreadsheets, the debt that's coming off for the future years is how that debt service, the retired debt service will take this debt and pay it off.
At the expense of what?
Retired debt.
No, at the expense of what?
Then,
What
Bonnie, are
would
you
that
not saying
retired,
that to us?
No, I see.
what would that retired debt have gone towards?
Okay, I get that.
Capital. So it's at the expense of capital.
I know.
Just, I mean, that's it. That's the trade-off that you need to decide.
I mean, absolutely.
You have a capital
Absolutely.
plan, you have a maintenance plan that you've been talking about. Big dollars. You gonna do everything on the maintenance plan? No. You're gonna do a lot of what's on that maintenance plan?
Yes.
Yes. Are we gonna build another building in town and not have a maintenance schedule for it?
Let's hope not.
Well, then, you have a high school that needs repairs already. You have this building.
It's all built into that capital, that's what we're.
Exactly, so how can you cut the funding that's gonna maintain those buildings and still feel comfortable that we're gonna take care of all this capital that we've invested? That's your decision.
What a red herring, why aren't we fixing that problem now? The fire station has nothing to do with whether or not we're properly maintaining the building. I just wanted to rise because, as Steve well knows, that the fiscal policy, as was adopted last fall, said that capital building projects should be done by debt exclusion unless there's an alternative plan. That was language we argued over, but maybe forgot that, but that was what was adopted.
Can anybody, I'm asking Steve, because I think you work with Steve or Bonnie, you work with this day in and day out. What is the goal of the cap plan? Is it to get that down, get all debt out of the cap plan? Or is it to just, just keep retiring debt until there's no more debt in the $3 million cap plan?
The original intent of the capital plan was to stop doing the capital exclusions outside of the levy limit, and to bring some of that
Right.
inside the levy.
Right.
But the intent is to try and address the infrastructure maintenance needs so that you're not doing major restorative projects, every
Yeah.
10 years.
Something I've said in the past is that we need to figure out what we want that cap plan to come to. Is it in there that it says, I mean, I've gone through it.
There's no dollar figure.
But no, but is there a figure to say all debt should be out of the cap plan?
In the policy?
Yeah.
There is talk about bringing the debt service from inside the levy down to a certain percentage of the operating budget. There's also something in there that says we will not borrow inside the levy unless there is a dedicated source of funding, such as cell tower funds or CPC funds. So this is not only against the policy, the intent of the policy on the debt exclusion side, it's against the policy on the funding of inside the debt service because it's not a dedicated funding source.
Okay. Do we want to continue to another night, or do we want to make any decisions tonight? Are we at a place where we're going to be able to come to a decision?
We always said that we'd know and make decisions at 10 o'clock at night.
Well, next week, when you're the chair.
All right, I would say.
And we just got another hour, didn't we, on Saturday? Town council said. Yeah.
I think we're going to go to April, March, what are we doing here? What's the next meeting, March 24th?
March,
Let's make it a full agenda item rather than like an 8B, and then give it a good half hour, I think.
sure, yeah, I mean, and the other part of that is that the warrant will have closed for, just so, full disclosure, the warrant for the town meeting closes on Friday, March 21st, so that there's no part of the discussion that occurs on the 24th that will have any impact on what the May 2014 town meeting looks like. Because there'll be no article,
Another meeting in September.
and there'll be no article, there'll also be no ballot questions, because the deadline for that will have come and gone by that time.
By the 24th?
Yeah.
So then that would eliminate from doing it at this meeting? at this meeting, so we'd pretty much we have to decide before the warrant closes if we're going to.
Well, there's two deadlines,
We're gonna do an
there's two deadlines hanging out there, the 21st.
Yeah.
Friday, the 21st at noon is when the board has set the deadline for town meeting articles, 45 days before town meeting. And then the statute commands when the deadline is. I was just going over that with some back and forth emails to Tom that I think, if I'm reading it correctly, and we'll confirm it, though, but I think that the deadline for placing ballot questions on will have come and gone by 7 o'clock, 2 weeks from tonight, so.
Well,
but no one here was talking about putting a binding ballot question on, for which you need 4 votes. There was discussion about a non-binding ballot questions, which I think if there's any further discussion on that, you'd have to do it next Monday.
Yeah, well, I think there's no one's proposing a scenario where this gets placed this year. I mean, everything's 2016 anyway, and I think what we have been doing as a board, we were trying to get out in front of this and try and set some sort of policy to plan for the next few years.
Well, right,
So
at
whether
the
or
end of
not
the
it has
day,
to
this was only meant to be a policy vote, and frankly, it would have to get carried out by future boards of selectmen in determining whether or not they followed that policy or adopted their own. And, a future Board of Selectmen is, irrespective of whether this policy stands or fails, a future Board of Selectmen could vote for them, could vote to put a debt exclusion question on the ballot. That's the decision that they get to make later. What we're doing now is the financial planning for the future, so.
You can still come with a ribbon cutting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
The red ribbon.
How about something to the effect of a motion that we rescind the vote we previously took and stay at a note, we have no position until the time we get to finish this discussion?
That's fine, I mean, you can make a motion, I don't know if anyone wants to voice it before the motion's made, so it doesn't go down, or it doesn't get supported. You sound like you're not in support of rescinding anything yet, or, I mean, I think it makes sense if we are reconsidering, we're not definitely going that way. It makes sense to do them both at the same time, so I don't care. I can't make a motion, I can't second, so if somebody wants to do something, that's fine. I can see it either way. I don't know, I see your point, and I see you waiting, so, that's all. So.
Well, I guess is there a second?
All right, I hear a motion, there's been 1 second, so motion fails, we'll take it up, and I think we should continue the conversation.
And do you want to do it on?
Well, what do we have, how much we got on the 24th right now, because we're going to be loaded up on that.
You'll be loaded up that night.
With long discussions.
But as we're saying, though, and if I could say that since it's not going to the May 2014 town meeting, it is not as, I think we would look on it as not a time-sensitive matter, and that the time-sensitive matters that you have would have priority for your next agenda. This would not.
All right. April 28th, April 14th, or
What's our first meeting in April?
14th.
Oh, it is?
Or May 19th.
Let's do the 14th.
April 14th? Okay.
Okay. April 14th.
All right, are we, let's see, what do we got? All right. So, thank you, everybody, for the discussion. Is everyone here? We don't have a time yet, but I'm sure you'll all be watching the agenda. So it's April 14th, we'll continue the discussion on financing the fire station.
We could probably do 8F next week, Mr. Chair.
You guys want to do 8F next week? I mean, you're only going to do part of it now anyway.
We've had the, do you want to come back next week? Okay, all right, fine.
Oh, okay.
Joe wants to go home. Yeah. Okay.
Tom is sitting here and.
Yeah.
I hear the meter running. You and I like. And so, I just.
See his tax bill going up.
Fire contract.
Hey, Chief.
If after
I'm sorry.
Mark gets finished,
Keith can walk you through what we were going to say anyway.
We'll do that next Monday night.
Next Monday night, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Have a great night, Steve.
I hope it was worth your night, Steve. You know?
Come on, we're gonna get this going.
All right,
Okay.
so collective bargaining, fire union contract, I just thought you might want to speak on this or be present.
We're continuing the town and the union, through our bargaining committees, have agreed to continue for one more year what we're calling the trial experiment with the new schedule of 10 and 14, that under the terms of the contract signed last summer, this schedule, we revert to the old schedule, the pre-10/14 schedule by June 30, 2014, unless we agree otherwise. Well, we've agreed to continue it for one more year, which will be to the conclusion of the current contract, June 30, 2015, by which time we will have, in the fall, have begun negotiations on a new successor agreement, and by which time we will have better data on it's going very well, the experiment's going very well, we're not experiencing the overtime, the fear was that we'd go to the round-the-clock shift and be exposed to much more overtime than we thought. We've been great at staying within budget, but the jury's still out, and we want to see how we do after a whole year. The union is agreeable to continuing that experiment for another 12 months, and that's what we're bringing in tonight to amend the contract. But it's going very, very well.
Plus you'll have everybody at the academy, right?
Exactly. And that'll give us, a look. It's very difficult right now with somebody in the academy for basically almost 10 months. It's going to give us it's a difficult judgment on the true reading of the overtime with the use of our swingman.
Okay.
But it's working out pretty well.
Okay. Ready? Yep. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to ratify the amendments to the contract with Littleton Professional Firefighters Association, International Association of Firefighters, Local 4599, expiring June 30, 2015, to extend the trial period of the stacked 10-14-hour work schedule through July 1, 2015. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll need to sign there's 2 copies of a signed agreement to get your signatures on.
All right,
Thank you.
moving on to the minutes. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve its minutes of Monday, February 10, 2014. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
What do we
I
have?
move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve its minutes of Monday, February 24, 2014. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Who's got the
What?
motion to go into exec? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, to go into executive session to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiations with a non-union personnel and not to convene an open session thereafter. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Aye.
Selectman Carr. Aye, myself. Selectman Knox?
Aye.
Selectman McCurdy?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We are in executive session.